All right, let's, we've suspended the rules. Is the video back on? Okay.
All good.
Great. I do appreciate it was very interesting discussion with the volunteer fire departments, and I'm glad we did that.
Yeah.
So moving on, Forward Sumner.
Industrial. Is that an industrial?
Jimmy Johnson here he is.
He's on page 76.
Okay.
And something to tell you in the past, this one has been paid historically from the interest on the hospital fund. After they spent the hospital fund this year, there's probably only gonna be less than 25. So the question is, do you want to fund it out of general operations because there's no longer, or do you want to fund it out of some of the small amount of the actual principal left out of the hospital fund?
So we'll have to, bottom line is, if we want to continue to do this, we'll have to find a funding, like something for it.
You'll have to use the reserves up in the hospital
Something
fund
new.
and or take money from the general operating property tax.
All right.
That's really
What page is?
76.
76. It's not on mine. Oh, there's not, just one line. Okay.
Mr. Johnson, go ahead.
Commission Chair Hyde, to Mr. Chairman Schultz, members of the Budget Committee, Mayor Isbell, I am Jimmy Johnston with the Fort Sumner Economic Partnership. Our work on your behalf is infrastructure plus workforce equals jobs. Growing business inside Sumner County through expansions and retention of business and industry, that's our focus. On any given day, 75 or 80% of your new jobs come from your existing businesses. We have about 65,000 jobs currently in Sumner County, spread over 5,300 businesses. We want these numbers to grow and not have our residents commute into another county. When we talk infrastructure, we specifically mean state transportation corridor. We serve as your de facto state transportation corridor office as we work with the state legislators, you, the county commission, the county mayor's office, the local municipalities, the regional transportation board, and most significantly, the Department of Transportation. Today, I want to provide you a return on investment, or ROI, report on the Commission's $100,000 annual appropriation. Sumner County has a portfolio of 88 road projects priced at $2.5 billion in the $10 billion 2045 Regional Transportation Plan. TDOT has $1.3 billion of your projects either in construction, right-of-way, or design and engineering. I have a handout or leave behind which offers some visuals of the projects I'm going to mention now. Expansion of the Vietnam Veterans Boulevard, adding a general purpose lane to make it 6 lanes, extending the merging lanes between exits, essentially giving you another general purpose lane, and widening out building out the wide shoulders, currently priced at $475 million. We have a connector project on Vietnam Veterans Boulevard to State Route 109 in Gallatin. That's correcting the bottleneck where at the stoplight where Vietnam Veterans now runs into the Long Hollow Pike. Portland Bypass, north and south segments, eliminates the dangerous safety hazards of the 18-wheelers backing up the intersection of State Route 52 and State Route 109 in downtown Portland. This project also finishes your 4-lane divided highway, which is our primary freight and goods movement corridor from I-65 to I-840. I-65 is being built in 4 segments, Goodlettsville, Millersville, White House, Portland, with the northernmost section under construction currently. The General Assembly, the state legislature, just provided TDOT with $3.3 billion in new funding. TDOT will use that funding to accelerate these projects. The new funding is designed to shorten the time for delivering road projects from 14 years to 5 years. Governor Lee and TDOT Commissioner Ely are looking to build, not plan. The projects that I have mentioned are in line to receive some of these acceleration dollars. It is our work for us to make that happen. Our work is intentional with a high ROI. My ask, or possibly plea, is to help us fund this work for you. We budget over $100,000 for the infrastructure transportation work. If you're not comfortable with the way the work is structured within Forward Sumner, before you zero out and leave the table, please let us work with you to get this work housed where you would be comfortable.
So I think, Mr. Johnson, that we've had a couple discussions here, and you know, I've been critical, and I think I might have moved from critical to fair to middling on Ford Sumner. I think that at least my issue is, my question, and it's the same question I've asked, you know, I'll ask everywhere. You've listed out all of the Tennessee projects, state level projects, and state level dollars, infrastructure dollars that are coming here. So 2 missions, you have 2 missions, workforce development, infrastructure. So let's just look at one of those, the infrastructure. What specifically is your role? Is it grant writing? Is it are you serving as kind of Sumner County's kind of liaison? Like what service are you specifically providing that helps us capture those dollars that if you were to go away, and I don't mean this in any bad way, like we would lose out? I think that's probably the question that people need answered in a,
Okay.
to break that out, like what specifically are we doing?
I got a process thing here. I think that what you're asking is the
Got it.
process. So, as I get into the process, I just make again the point that there's literally billions of dollars at stake, and we don't want to lose our momentum, to your point, and we don't want these competitive dollars to go to Davidson or Rutherford or Williamson County. TDOT tells us right now that Sumner County does it the best in the state. When pushed, they will mention Sevier County, but only that. So, to your point about the process, how do we work together? So we get the project in the plan. It has to be in the plan, so TDOT can reach in there and build the plan and access the funding that's assigned to that plan. The members of the members of the Transportation Policy Board, or the MPO, it's made up of the local mayors and city managers. That's a 6-county body. For example, Portland Mayor Mike Callis is going to be the chair of that body in 2024. It's a 2-year term. That's very significant. The Sumner County contingent works together, aided and abetted by Ford Sumner. We work directly then with the senior TDOT officials to get that to the build list. So another example I would say right now to your question is some projects we've worked on recently, are working on currently and recently would be the city of Hendersonville. The city of Hendersonville's got exit 8, Salisbury Road, tunnel, a viaduct to go underneath the CSX railroad tracks. We took the city of Hendersonville to TDOT and getting on the list for the local interstate connector monies. And
I do remember that. I was in a couple of those meetings, so I can definitely vouch that you were.
And also, there's something called CRISPR grant, which is it's a very well focused grant, so we're on that list right now too. So, and then recently we worked with the city of Portland to work through the bureaucracy to get them matching funds from TDOT to light the the new exit at the state line, exit 121. So, a couple examples of that as far as in the transportation world is what we do. So, but beyond that, we convene that group under our community development and infrastructure committee. So we bring those city managers, the county mayor, city managers, mayors into the room, and that's where we plan how do we get our projects, their projects into that plan to begin with, so that TDOT can build from that plan.
That's right.
Okay. Let's start with my third question, project costs. The project in Hendersonville, I have a real problem with that. Now, I'm going to support it because it is my town. It is desperately needed. But the origin of the problem could have been averted if properly planned to begin with when they were doing work at that intersection. Now, I'm hearing you say we, our committee, worked to develop and resolve this problem and get state aid. This is going to cost us probably hundreds of thousands of dollars to help the city of Hendersonville. Of course, in a way, it helps the county, and we did help Gallatin. Not that I agreed with that at the time. It opened a door. Who are we?
Who are we in this?
Mm-hmm.
In this
You
case?
said we sat down. I mean, somebody made decisions. Now it's here at this table, and we have to fulfill somebody else's dream. Who's we?
You're specifically talking about
The planning. Who decides for us what's going to be done?
Oh, well, the city officials do that. I mean, that's their role. I mean, their own engineering office. What we've been able to do is take, like on the Vietnam Veterans Corridor, the whole thing. What we've been able to do is, in that room, the individual city projects, can they fit together in a narrative that then makes this a corridor project versus the individual city of Hendersonville project. And then we've been able to take that to TDOT with signatures from every city and the county in the county mayor and signatures of the cities to say, we support this vision. And in the case of 386 Vietnam Veterans Boulevard, that's, mostly Hendersonville and Gallatin. But then as you spread them out, Portland's got a bypass project, and then you've got the I-65 projects, which covers your other cities too. So that's been our secret sauce when we're able to take this to TDOT to say, here, it's not just the city of Hendersonville that didn't get this accomplished. And on that specific project, Mr. Hyde, the work that I just recently did with the mayor of Hendersonville, there's really hard feelings at TDOT about that project and how it didn't get accomplished in the past.
I can imagine.
And they didn't want to have even that discussion. Because of our relationships with TDOT, I was able to bring the mayor there and to re-engage them on this discussion.
I'm able to have a little bit of insight into this one in specific. I think there's two questions that Mr. Hyde has. One is more broadly, in any of these projects, who's we and who's making decisions, which is a fair specific, and maybe this is always how it goes, I don't know. But specific to the 386 bypass, and look, I'm gonna level out here. I'm gonna make a motion this afternoon for to do some assistance to the city of Hendersonville for this project. But the specific origin of that was from the city of Hendersonville. They understand that because it was done improperly, per your note, years and years ago, the state may very well shut that intersection down at some point in the future. They can, and TDOT has threatened to do that. They have not done it yet, but to do that would be catastrophic. So the city of Hendersonville, the city planner, Mr.
Keith Freeman.
Yes. So he and Mayor Clary put together a plan for how to, that's where the origin of it was. How do we fix this? And then I think Mayor Clary is doing what he's supposed to do as a mayor, and to go out and say, hey, look, this thing is going to cost $28 million. I think was the latest number. How can I put together this package of, how can I fund it, basically? And so Mayor Clary contacted me about it being the budget chair, and Mayor Clary contacted you for your connections at the state, and that, for this specific thing, was the origin of it. So it originated with Mayor Clary's office, and then the plan started there. The question for how to fund it was, it's a joint, for that amount of money, it's Mayor Clary is gonna try to do his best, I think, as any of us would do, to put together different pots so that no one entity gets crushed.
And let me say, I'm sorry for monopolizing this time, because we do have a workshop, but I won't have Jimmy here to ask some questions. I am going to support this project because I think it is needed for traffic flow. and so forth, and we did help Gallatin. But I'm disgusted by how we got here. I'm really disgusted by how we arrived at this situation. The one thing that bothers me is that during the original discussion of what will we do about this, and the state coming and saying you were supposed to have built over the railroad track, how did that happen? How was a project designed to avoid the railroad? And now we have this problem that's going to cost us millions and millions of dollars. How did that happen?
Mr. Hyde, I don't know all the specifics on that project, but I will tell you that CSX has as much power as any bureaucracy in the United States. I mean, they're right there with the Corps of Engineers. I mean, they make their own decisions. And so in that particular instance, I've not ever seen any drawings of over the tracks, but they're adamantly opposed to going over their tracks. So I think through the years where they might have said earlier on that that might be an option, it's not an option right now.
Okay, and the next, may I ask my other
Yeah, go
question?
ahead.
The next question I have is, Forward Sumner, and I started out a big proponent of, I want everybody here to know, a big proponent of Forward Sumner, but I get this very uneasy feeling now that it's an engine for almost unbridled growth. I may be wrong, but that's where I'm coming from at this point. My question would be, is Forward Sumner in any way associated with a Metro Nashville organization?
Well,
A branch of it?
Oh, no, sir.
No?
No, we're set up as a 501c6 not-for-profit here.
So you don't work for another organization
No,
in
sir.
Metro Nashville?
No,
Is it is another organization in Metro Nashville an umbrella for Forward Sumner and some of these others?
No, sir, no, absolutely not.
How does Forward Sumner work with the GNRC?
GNRC right now houses the MPO, or what they call the Transportation Policy Board. So we have to work with the GNRC bureaucracy to get to the MPO. And that wasn't true until about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago when the MPO was independent. And so there was a move to consolidate that for administrative cost into the GNRC. And then unfortunately it became a department of the GNRC when it was supposed to be a dotted line.
So is it fair to say that the state, in order to allocate and prioritize its dollars, works with the GNRC, and in order for you to lobby for Sumner County, you must work with GNRC, or is that for the MPO, is that a fair?
Yeah, in my mind, when y'all say GNRC, GNRC is a planning construct. They have some.
Well, that's actually, I think, the thrust of the question, like we
Okay.
don't want to be dictated to by.
Yes, sir. But in my mind, it's the MPO. So the MPO is in fact a federal body is what it is. So that's $10 billion 2045 regional transportation plan. That's $10 billion of federal dollars that has been allocated for road projects. So TDOT has to be in that plan for TDOT to reach in there and be able to access the federal dollars and mix it with the state dollars.
I'm not gonna lie, this is actually that's gonna make it worse, because the argument worse. And, again, I've moved from being like very vehemently against Forward Sumner to being fair to Midland, but these are the parts of it that make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because, the previous question, and I know we're going over time here, but this is something we've gotta get,
I have one more question, so don't lock me out. You
No,
go
I
ahead.
won't. I'm not gonna lock you out. You've asked
We still
very
have 3
few,
minutes.
Mr. Hyde.
3 minutes.
So,
well worth the time.
the problem here is, the worry is that we were talking about state level, and we don't want to be planned for, basically be dictated to by the state. And now there's a federal component that's overlaid on top of it. And that is the stuff that where federal and state, and particularly federal organizations, take taxpayer dollars, our dollars at the end of the day, and hold us hostage by them. And that is the thing we want to, look, we also live in the real world here. I mean, I want to access those dollars too, but how to make sure that we are not dictated to by these other entities, and we're representing our interests in Sumner County as opposed to the interests of Washington.
Or Nashville.
Right.
If
Sorry.
I might, excuse me, Mr. I misspoke in that the MPO is not a federal entity. That's where the federal dollars have to
But yeah,
go.
that's right, but they influence that through they're gunning. I mean,
Well, there's federal regulations that come.
right.
with that.
exactly.
But
That's right.
but
Like
the
you
team-
have to have, like the corridor, right? I mean, you have to have bus lanes, like that's the,
Well, we didn't have to have them. That was part of the TDOT, actually, is,
oh,
was
well,
was
you
the
guys
one
to blame.
put that in there. But I don't want to misconstrue that.
No, I understand.
TDOT is-
Well, I'm pressing here, but-
MPO is not a overlord of TDOT. It's just it's where some federal dollars are that you could, if it's not in that plan, then it's harder for TDOT. TDOT could actually come in and say, put it inside the plan, but there's a process to get it into the plan. Excuse me, Mr. Hunt.
Okay. I was headed toward the GNRC when Jeremy spoke up and said what he had, but you weren't answering GNRC. But are you the engine and GNRC the steering wheel for this thing?
No, sir, the Greater Nashville Regional Council, it's an unfortunate name, it's a development district, it's a creature of the state. So there's 9 of them across the state, and they do match up with the economic community development job-based camps in that territory. So that entity, the GNRC entity, is a 13-county entity. And so who serves on their board are the mayors, city mayors, and the county mayor. And so that's, when I call them a planning construct, they're a development district, as I mentioned, a creature of the state.
Okay, and my last question, I've got a lot of questions, but this is the last one I'm going to ask. How are your projects chosen? You listed a slew of activities here that I fear will financially entangle us in some way. And we don't have much, who's responsible for designing and choosing what these projects will be?
City starts, and then TDOT is the builder. TDOT is State Transportation Corridor. So city asks for, gets in the plan, TDOT accepts and builds. That's, no matter what project it is.
But other than infrastructure, you're involved in other types of, who chooses these projects? I haven't been involved in anything. The commission is not,
Well, what we did with the road projects is that we just piecemealed those together.
yeah, other than the roads, anything that you're doing.
Yes, sir.
Who's making decisions?
Well, again, we're set up as a public-private, not-for-profit. So I have a 20-person board of directors, and then I have a 6-person executive committee. So that's more on a day-to-day basis.
All Sumner Countyans.
Yes, sir. We have a chairman, vice, incoming chairman, outgoing chairman. I didn't bring my board roster with me, but I'd be happy to. My current chairman is Justin Curry, the chairman of Hendersonville Medical Center. Rod Harkleroad, the CEO of Sumner County Regional Medical, is also on that executive committee.
So they either reside or work in Sumner, or they?
Yes, reside or work, yes, sir.
Well, and I don't really, where they reside doesn't matter to me. I'm an elected official from
Yes, sir.
a very blue-collar working district in Hendersonville. And I won't, as their elected official, I would like to be involved before we get obligated and the horse is saddled. I'd like to be involved somehow with what we're facing out there. And so far, I don't feel like things like this project that I will support. Here it is, and I don't know where it came from. You've explained it, but still, we need to be more on the front end of this thing, These other people are not elected by the citizens in their community to speak for them.
Yes, sir. Mayor Isbell sits on our board.
But Mayor Isbell's not in my district.
Oh,
Yeah, he is in my district. I represent Mayor Isbell.
I will never correct Mr. Hyde.
Having been his principal, he better not. But do you see where I'm coming from? I would like to know more about what's coming down the pike. And I feel totally, until it hits us, I feel totally uninvolved. Do you live in Sumner County?
no, sir, I do not. I work here, and I'm here every day. Yes, sir.
I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Forward Sumner is a frightening group to, I have district number 6, and I knocked on 1,000 doors, probably had 650 conversations. I mentioned Sumner County to most of them, not one had heard of you. And what you have to understand is the vast majority of Sumner Countyans do not want to see the kind of growth that you appear to be propelling. That's why Mr. Hyde is concerned that we're not in on anything.
Sure.
We have no knowledge of what you're doing, who's giving the orders. When I found out that 386 was going to be 4 lanes in each direction and run right past my house up 31E past Westmoreland. Now, that may be 20, 30, 40 years out there, but the long and short of it is that the people in my district, that 31E would go right through and Daryl's as well. We don't want it. We want to keep the rural feel, and you start running 2 and 4 lane highways out that, we're gonna have nothing but industry, and industry is great in its application. I understand the way planning has to be done. But if Forward Sumner was a true advocate of the citizens of Sumner County, you would be listening to the citizens, you would be listening to the commissioners who are listening to the citizens. And I would strongly encourage you to do that, because you feel right now like an invisible locomotive that's just plowing right through the county. And, you know, statements like Nashville's North Shore is not endearing to people. So just understand where we all feel about this.
I just want to make sure. I'm So you're over in
District 6,
the
the far east side.
okay, and is it close to?
It's Castalian Springs, half of Bethpage, and part of unincorporated city of unincorporated Gallatin.
Okay. So is there anybody city-wise or whatever? I know you're, I guess, in the county, but you're not in the city area.
No city.
But Mayor Isbell's involved in the city, Bethpage or whatnot. Are they?
Bethpage is an
That's not a city. Yeah,
unincorporated
you're
township.
So there's what's the nearest like city?
Gallatin.
Okay.
Gallatin on one end and Westmoreland up on.
I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, it's a great point. Great guy. Not yeah. As you were talking, I was sitting there trying to figure out
Yeah, you're
who he may be talking to that is representing. But I guess
I
guess
don't-
Well, I mean,
Mayor-
I would just know, and we're at time, so but Bob, I do want to give you a chance.
Yeah,
I
just
just,
have two
I'll get
quick
both
things.
these guys. I just wanted to note that, like, and we can hammer on this one a little bit, because this is important, right? I mean, this is an important thing to, if you know, I guess I'll just say it super bluntly. We're gonna figure out if this money is worth it or not, and if you want to keep functioning, I think there's gonna have to be some changes in, at a minimum, outreach and making sure that the people understand what's going on, and probably in the prioritization of, I don't know how to say it other than, we want Forward Sumner, or whatever this is, to represent the interests of Sumner County, not the interests of a planning region inflicting itself upon us. And I won't say anything more about it, but Ms. Brown.
One of the things that has bothered me, been here for 28 years.
Yes, sir.
I live on Forest Creek, and that interchange that has always loomed, we don't want that.
Yes, sir.
We don't, and we, Don and I, we're right next to each other. District-wise. We're right. But we see Costco going in. And that was the reason why that interchange was supposedly going to be put in, but it doesn't serve Costco really any way, because it would drag them, which would be 2 miles away from Costco, when you could two spurs off of 386 and make right into the parking lot of Costco. That's, again, something that if we had some kind of input, you know, it would help a lot more, be a lot smoother transition, rather than blasting that interchange, because there's gonna be a lot of blasting, because there's so much rock. And shaking the foundations of all the houses, and Alexandria Place, my road, possibly even Center Point.
Mr. Brown, that project is obviously a city of Hendersonville project, and it's been on the books for 15 years, 18 years maybe.
We've heard about it for a long time.
That's what I mean, so that's a city process to, if you're opposed to it.
So is your role in that just like you're going, and I said I'd shut up, man, I break my rules all the time. Is your role there just what the city says, this is the plan, this is what we're gonna do, and they come to you and say, hey, can you be my liaison and work with the other stakeholders in the county, is that, and then go and represent that? Is that how this is working?
Lobbyists.
Yeah, that's right.
This is how we've done it on Vietnam veterans, because we looked at the projects that were already on the books, and could we fit those together as we build out this
Right.
corridor vision?
You know, here's the frustration in my district. You mentioned Alexandria Place. I reside in Alexandria Place. You go down the bypass, you can see the houses backing up to the bypass. And they can't get a straight answer from anybody. Are y'all gonna put a noise barrier wall? Because the noise, I mean, I live further in Alexandria, away from the bypass enough that it used to be you never would hear a lot of traffic. And they're like, yeah, this is constant traffic coming in and out. What's it gonna be like when they expand? No one can give me either a straight answer. Are you gonna put a wall to at least alleviate some of the noise? They're frustrated on the city because their streets, to be quite blunt, are crap, not been repaved in 25 years. And now all of a sudden, here comes TDOT, and we're gonna expand the bypass. We're gonna have crap streets like we have right now, and we're gonna have more lanes of traffic in our backyard, and the growing frustration with that is just tremendous. I would love to know from my constituents that have complained to me, where do we stand with that? Are they gonna put a noise barrier wall there? Because they're like, should I sell? Should I get out now? You know.
Obviously, plans for construction aren't there yet. I mean, it's in the process of design engineering right now. So that would be a good issue to bring forward to, I think that's still in Hendersonville.
Yeah.
So, we would certainly absolutely bring that to those concerns to TDOT. I say we, the city of Hendersonville.
I mean, is there a timeline for, because people always often ask me, what's the timeline to get an answer? Are we gonna put a wall there, or are we just gonna expand it and we're just, part of our yard's gonna be,
So that would be part of the, when the final design and engineering, the way the TDOT does is, tied to this new money too. There's a whole public hearing process of what that looks like. So as they lay out their design and says, what do y'all think about this?
So will the citizens have any input on that to TDOT? Like if the citizens come together, if we could collaborate enough citizens on that back end of the neighborhood, and it's also Homestead too on the other side, another development. If those citizens somehow came together, would they be able to demand, it's going on a limb here, can they demand TDOT, hey, we can't take this noise in our yards, you need to do something? I mean, where do the citizens have a say in this?
In that process, that public hearing process, after you know the route, or they know the route, absolutely, that's when that would come into.
And how would they find out about the public hearing? Is that something they're notified, being that they're up against the bypass?
Yeah, does a good job of, working through the city and then working within that, wherever their design is going into those neighborhoods. I mean, that's where all the advertisement's gonna be, or, their meetings set up, so, and they'll have more than one. I mean, that's a pretty, there's an environmental process to design and engineering, and that's when all this comes into play, is that they have to meet their environmental concerns. And that's when it gets at the neighborhood.
One more 20-second statement. I want you to know I am not opposed, as I think most of these people are. I'm not opposed to progress. I'm not opposed to development. I'm not opposed to things that advance our county business-wise, but I am opposed to unbridled growth that we cannot keep up with our infrastructure, like some of our other surrounding counties, and I can point to one that, have now raised permit fees and everything else trying to stop the unbridled growth. Because when you talk about this unbridled growth, then you have the big word taxes, which is totally unfair to a hardworking mom and dad in my district. And in my district, most all mothers and dads do work. And just like me, they have, a budget, and they have to meet that budget. It's unfair to the taxpayer to be supporting this unbridled growth. If we have the infrastructure, and if we have some way of putting the infrastructure responsibility on those developing, that's better. But right now, what happens is all this development occurs, and then mom and dad are left with the property taxes, and that's my concern.
So, we can, all right, well, the rules are suspended, but I'll go ahead and, first off, thank you. I don't want to cut, this was very important
Chairman, so can
discussion.
I mention just one more thing?
One thing.
Workforce development, this was the end of my report anyway, but this is the update on the Ford Sumner Workforce Invest Grant. Special industry training, heavy-duty equipment operators, training is delivered through Volunteer State Community College and their contractor. First class or cohort was 6 weeks, no cost to the trainees, 17 in the class, 14 graduated, 12 job offers, two pending job offers, average starting wages over $20 an hour. The graduation ceremony was emotional and heartwarming. The Commissioner of Environment spoke. Mr. Rogers was there, Mr. Rogers was there, families cheered. It's about changing lives for the better.
So how many people got placed into a job?
12 out of 14 so far.
12 out of 14?
Yeah.
Two pending.
At how much?
$20 an hour average. And we'll have a summer class that starts on June the 20th, again through Volunteer State.
I mean,
And TCAT.
I asked you to present the results, and you brought results, so
That's my report.
thanks for that. All righty. Thank you, sir. So we're a little behind now. Tennessee Rehab.
Jimmy point out Tennessee Rehab, it's on page number 68. The amount paid to Tennessee Rehab historically, the 158 was paid to them, and they paid us rent more than that. Last year, they only rented the building 75% of the year, so the commission only funded 119,059. So all the funds that's been funded them historically has been funded back to us in the form of rent. So if you fund the 115 this year, you'll have to take the additional funding from county coffers on the rest.
I don't see it on 68.
What
It's on
page?
page number 68,
What are we talking about?
Where?
Vocational Rehabilitation Center.
TRC.
They used to donate them 158, 745, but they rented the building from us for TRC for more than
I
that.
see it, so.
Last year, they rented it.
Oh, there it is. It's an appropriation, say, like the fourth item down, fourth row.
Okay, right here, I got you.
And then the 119,059 represented 75% of what they used to give them because they only rented the building for the first 3 quarters, was the understanding last year.
And so how much would we have to come up with?
You'd have to come up with the whole amount because they used to pay that back to us as rent because they're no longer renting the building.
Right here. Oh,
So anything you're funding from will have to be a new revenue funding source, or it will need to be a new source. of
So why aren't they,
I
what's
don't know.
changed?
That's a TRC building, I believe.
Oh,
it's
that's that
state
building?
Yeah.
But they're back here to kind of tell you but last year the commission did cut them by 25% because they're no longer renting the building.
Go ahead.
Based on the percent they were renting it.
Go ahead.
I'm with the Tennessee Rehabilitation Center, so any questions you have, I'll do my best to answer.
What's your name again?
My name is Chris Slater. I'm a career training career training coordinator for the Tennessee Rehabilitation Center of Gallatin. For those of you who aren't familiar with us and what we do, we work with vocational rehabilitation. We work with individuals with disabilities to help them get the soft skills, the networking, and the opportunity to get, keep, and promote forward in a job. So, you know, I always look at what we're doing as future investment. We're taking a lot of individuals who may not have ended up working for whatever disability that they have, and, you know, largely worked off of public assistance, or lived off of public assistance, and giving them that opportunity to go out and get a job, become tax-paying citizens, come off of public assistance. And so, you know, kind of a long-term investment.
So the building rent, do you get a building from the state now, where you guys live?
We are now housed at the American Job Center.
Do you have to pay rent there?
We do.
So you moved from our building to their building?
The county did not renew our lease.
Oh, okay, so it was their choice, I'm not sure.
They asked to have the building back.
So when did this happen?
It happened last year, and they've historically paid us, everything that they pay it, that we pay them, they actually paid us more for rent. And we actually remodeled that building a couple of years back for them to do the lease, so I'm not really sure why their lease was terminated.
So this is, because I think this is relevant to some other stuff that's going on right now, and I'm gonna ask the exact same question that Mr. Hyde did. Who made the decision for you guys to move?
My understanding, and I'll be honest, it's one of those things where things just kind of come down to me, but my understanding is the previous county mayor.
We were told that actually you guys terminated to move over there. I think it was what, and we'll have to pull the
Yeah.
minutes. I believe that's not quite what we were told. And we were at the meeting last year, and I believe you guys were there.
I was.
Chris, and their understanding from that meeting was that you guys were moving to the other building, that it wasn't really, that you guys didn't renew the release is what we understood at the time.
Yeah.
That's-
I think Mr. Baker was there too.
Yeah,
So,
and the
yeah,
But
building
you guys
became
actually the
open.
ones that wanted to move is what was said at the meeting.
Well,
you were at.
I will say that as far as the building goes, we did not need those facilities that were there anymore because of a change in how we work. and
Mr.
how
Baker and
required
Miss
work.
Allison and was there, and Miss Browning last year, and I don't know if anybody else was, but
What was this?
it was my understanding last year, maybe Mr. Baker has a different one, that you guys had chosen to move. That's why they cut 25% off the rent, because you guys had chosen to move out of our building.
And once again. of course,
And that was my understanding last
No,
year, you guys were.
Was it the
Maybe I
budget?
misunderstood.
Budget last year?
Yeah, it was.
Because I wasn't in the
well,
budget, I wasn't on budget.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was, they were originally paid 158, we paid you guys 158, 745, or the county did.
That was typical.
You guys only rented the building for 75% of last year, so they cut the actual amount we paid you by 25% because you guys had decided to move, was the understanding.
Well,
That was my understanding, maybe I misunderstood.
I mean, I was told we were moving.
Okay.
Now who's they?
Well, what did it come from? Pam, I mean, help me out on here, because it's been a year.
Was it?
The director of our agency told us we were moving. We heard that the former county mayor decided not to renew our lease, so we started looking for some other place to move.
Which we know why.
Well, At the last
All
budget meeting,
coming
we did not know
together.
where we were
It
gonna
is.
move to.
And
We
we
got it.
remodeled that building
All right,
several
I
years back
mean,
for you guys. off.
So when we added the
Still
bench-
used as a workshop.
Well,
Not to totally derail here, but back to I think we get the point, once again, on what happened here.
That was my understanding that you guys had decided to do, but I don't know.
So what's the bottom line
The
on?
bottom line is if you give them the $119,059 and they're not renting the building from us, you're basically coming up with a new $119,059. Because you don't have a revenue source. for it
What's
anymore.
what's your funding source?
30% from local and then a 70% match federal.
So whatever we give you, they will match it, 2 to 1.
If I've got my numbers, let me look at my numbers here. Essentially, if we get the funding we requested, which we requested the exact same amount as last year, we should get, well, roughly a little over 300,000.
Well, right, so,
From
but
federal.
the issue is
360.
that last year, or previous years, what we gave you, we got back 75% of it in rent.
We
Well, we
got,
got back all.
I'm gonna show you the revenue, we
It
actually cut
was
it all
it
back.
was a $0.
So now if we were to continue this,
You have to come up with all of it. I've cut it out of the revenue.
We don't get it back.
Right, and I can show you where that revenue is, it's
Okay.
lease rentals.
Got it.
If you go to your lease rentals income.
Wow, this is getting worse and
Everybody left
worse.
out. But that was my understanding, that they
That's
decided
how
not
it
to
was
renew the
always
lease. I don't know if
previously,
that's correct.
Which makes
Maybe
it,
I
But I'll put
misunderstood.
down.
I believe I was actually on the job for my first month when I had that.
But I may have, I can say I may have misunderstood that, but
this
I don't
TRC building
believe
is getting more egregious, is
all
basically
right,
the whole.
I think we've got, this is,
Well, and I
we
could
need to
misunderstand
deliberate
that.
on this.
I
do need
I have a real question.
Absolutely.
I do too.
How many disabled people do you deal with in a year's time, just on average?
What would you say, Carol? Well, I
We
mean,
work individually, one-on-one with them, so 20 to 30
In a year?
in a year.
Okay. How, are these physical disabilities, or are they also
they are
mental?
any disability that can impact their ability to get a job. So it can be physical, it can be mental, it can be developmental.
Just health.
Yes.
Okay, and of the 20 to 30 people, do you follow up and find out how many are able to keep a job?
We are a part of vocational rehabilitation. And I know that before it's considered a successful closure, they have to be at the job for at least 90 days.
Okay, and so it's 20 to 30 people. Do you know how many are able to maintain a job for 90 days?
I don't have that.
Don't have that, okay, all right.
That would be the VR counselors.
Jeremy was next.
So, are you a state agency or a Sumner County agency? What is the,
We are a state agency.
so why isn't the
Department
state
of Human
funding?
Services.
So is the state, you said county, local match, and then federal, but where's the state fund you?
That's
If you're a
where
state
things get
agency.
all kinds of complex. Okay, let me see if I can get this out in words. The Tennessee Rehabilitation Centers, which work with vocational rehabilitation, receive the local and federal funding. Vocational rehabilitation itself is a state agency, is a state program under the Department of Human Services.
So how much does Department of Human Services give you? Tennessee Department of Human Services fund your operations currently? That you were running out of the TRC and now will be running out of the vocational center?
For TRC, I think that all of our funding is the local and federal match.
So so for the operations you're doing here, is any of that state?
I do not believe so.
And yet you're a state level entity?
We are controlled by the
They
market.
don't have,
So
they don't have
if we-
salary.
If we give you $0, what happens?
I am honestly not sure.
There's one way to find out.
I kind of like my job, so I'd rather not.
I can show you where that revenue comes back in to kind of make it clear. So
Everybody thinks I'm mean.
if you go to page 24,
24?
page 24, and you look at property rent, if you notice the property rent for 21, 22 went way down.
That's kinda where I was getting to.
23, 24, it's only $9,700. So that's the money that we're funding back to the foundation. If you go down the page, about 8 from the top, there'll be a line item called property rent.
On page
Property
68?
rent.
24.
Page 24, I'm sorry. I may have talked.
No, it's
just wasn't listening to it.
Well, there's a lot of noise in there too. There. If you go to page 24, you go up, I don't know, I'm just guessing about 8 or 9 lines. And there's one that says property rent. If you look at that number, it went from 173, 320, and
Down to
21, 22 to
9,700.
132. That was where they went from 100% rental to 75. And then now we went down to $9,700. That's where they're going out, where they're no longer renting the building. So that's your revenue loss on the other side of them moving. And as I'm saying, I may have misunderstood the whole discussion of why they were moving out, but I'm not really sure at this point.
Does Tennessee pay your salary?
No,
I am considered a state employee.
but they don't pay your
They
salary.
don't pay your salary. You don't.
Why aren't you a county employee, is basically what I'm getting
Yeah,
to.
really.
Why is it, I mean,
Why am I not a county employee?
yeah, because Tennessee's not paying you anything, the county
Are
is.
you a state entity or a nonprofit entity? That's what they're.
I'm sorry?
Are you guys considered a state or nonprofit is what I think they're asking. I think you're considered a state entity.
I think we're considered a state
The
entity.
county donates to them, and then they do federal matches, and I say.
And yet, then the state gets, but you're a state entity, this is bizarre.
And I would
guess
guess.
it's
Mr. Hyde? Not like that.
I'm gonna make this one final comment and
Well, I'm
then,
gonna do this way. I know that my paycheck says state of Tennessee.
But you don't know if it's where the funding comes from, but you.
That's correct.
He's a state employee, but we're not sure if he's funded through donations and federal money or donations, federal and state money.
okay,
That's
well,
kind of.
I'm gonna make this final comment and then we can cut this off and move on. But you're not on the hot seat here. I wanna assure you of that. We're not angry at you, upset at you. I think your work is commendable as far as I'm
I wish I
concerned.
had the answers for you.
But
don't.
I would say this to anyone that thinks, and I've heard this comment, that this commission that was elected 2 years ago, if there's anyone who thinks that they're too involved in county government, this is probably one of the best examples right here and previously that a lot of things have been going on and the commission has been cut totally out of decisions, planning, and things that result from that. Once again, I don't think anyone here, and I've been here 30 years on this commission, I do not remember the commission making a decision on getting out of that building. Now, perhaps it flew over my head and I didn't know it, but I don't remember any kind of decision. And it would have been more appropriate for the county commission to have been making that kind of decision, because if it was down to the fact that, hey, we want to help our citizens with disabilities versus some other, whatever reason for vacating that building, I know where I would have fallen on that issue. But this is a good example right here, I think, where the commission needs to further exert itself to get back under control a very loose kind of operation.
One more quick question. When did your lease expire? Or when did you?
End of March, I believe,
75% this year.
So, March of this year's when?
of this
So-
calendar year.
So you were told
2 months ago?
you weren't getting renewed.
When were you told you weren't getting renewed?
Carol, do you happen to
2
recall?
months ago.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact date, I just know that the former county mayor came into our building to look at it, and we were told we weren't getting our
Do you remember what month that was? August, July?
It was a.
We're not trying to interrogate.
Yeah,
You guys
we're-
are not.
we're just
on
trying
that.
to
We're unraveling a string that you're
Yeah,
part of a
the only
narrative.
facts I know is that the thing was.
It was a couple
no
years
revenue,
ago?
they were going out.
A couple of
2019?
Years ago.
Yeah, he came with the election commission to look
Yeah,
at
you're at the meeting.
That's all we needed to hear.
You just answered that.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. That's, you heard that
Well,
string, right?
here's what I can say to be fair, these are all new members, and these two staff, I can tell you the facts I know for certain. One, I was told we weren't getting that revenue after that Two, they cut the donation by 25% because my understanding was
That's what we're trying to
they
get.
decided they didn't want the building, so I don't know if that's true or not from the downward.
Yeah.
We'll figure this out.
I just know from the committee.
I get it.
what we-
We've got a step.
I was involved in the inside office.
We've got a step, Sumner County Museum.
And that's on page number 77. And they are about, I don't know, let's say 8 to 9 up again from the bottom.
Couple of years.
Say 77.
77? Okay.
77, and there's like the pink line, the first pink line towards the bottom, if you go down 2 below that, they're right there.
Before we start, is the Trousdale House, is that what we're talking about? No, it's not.
That's Sumner County Museum in Gallatin.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Ryan Baker. I'm the executive director for the Sumner County Museum here in Gallatin. And for those of you not familiar with the museum actually owns 4 properties here in the downtown. One, the museum itself is behind Trousdale Place. So we are on their grounds, and we own the building there.
Okay.
We also own 3 historic properties just up East Main Street, across from where Captain D's and Arby's is at, which includes the historic Stonewall, the Carriage House, which is on the historic registry, the National Registry, and the old county maintenance garage.
Wait, what, sorry, David, what, did you say
If
77?
you're on page 77 and there's the bottom pink line,
Oh, I
if you
see.
go down to, that's them,
Oh, I see, just the,
this past year, they received 12.5, they're asking for
for
15.
2,500 more.
Right, in the last couple of years before that, they received 10, I believe. Before that, you was probably.
Okay.
I can't recall.
Yes.
They're relatively new donation,
Okay,
just to give you the history.
so that's the bottom line there on that one. And you said you operate how many buildings?
4.
You operate 4 buildings, how much total revenue?
Right now, we're bringing in about 145,000 a year.
So we're about
Yeah.
8 or 6 or
About
8%,
9%.
yeah. something
Yes, sir.
like that. Okay.
2 of those buildings are operational, 2 are in the planning phase.
Where do you get your revenues from?
We're self-funded.
Okay.
We do get some city grants, City of Gallatin. We do get some from county tourism through their grant, Heritage Marketing grant. The rest fundraisers. I've developed several revenue streams for the museum.
So we fund the tourism. We fund tourism. Is tourism?
Yes, they have, they release a heritage marketing grant each year that's available to historic sites to help to promote those sites.
But there's entrance fees to the one behind Trousdale Place, right?
No, sir, we have gone to donation only.
Donate, okay.
Thanks to some of our corporate sponsorships, we are now able to offer that for all of Sumner County.
Who funds your corporate side?
So we have several corporate members. We have started a corporate membership, and basically what that is, we have about 8 to 10 events that the museum puts on annually, and so it's very exhausting for me to ask for sponsorships over and over and over. And so basically this allows them to choose 3 events to be a direct sponsor of, plus they receive some other benefits. I actually have information if the group would like to
that'd be
just
great.
take one and pass it on. Several of our community banks are corporate sponsors. Career Farms is a corporate sponsor. We have Beretta just joined as a corporate sponsor, and others. But we started that in 2021, and we're about 20 members now.
Got it. Any questions?
Is there anything specific for the increase, or you just?
Yes, sir. So the additional 2,500 that we've asked for this year will go to match part of a grant from the Gallatin Rotary Club. They are giving the museum a $10,000 grant, and we are a matching grant. And we are using funds from our annual giving campaign, which goes out in May, with $2,500 from the city of Gallatin. And we are going to use that $20,000 to apply for a state grant through the Community and Economic Development Department for facade improvements. And that will go to the 332 East Main Street address, which is historic Stonewall. It was built in the 1830s, and it currently serves as a historic educational Airbnb stay. And it's set up as it would have been in the 1850s. Every room has a QR code, so a guest can scan it. It tells you the history of the pieces in the room, the people on the paintings on the walls. And we actually opened that in November, and we've grown that to, we're about at 40% occupancy now. And so some of those funds go back to the city and the county for your occupancy fees, which then goes to tourism to help promote the area.
That's the house behind the carriage?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, the three properties past East Main were the former properties of John Garrett, who was one of the museum founders. He donated those properties to the museum when he passed, and what the board and myself has been working on is a plan for sustainability to allow all these different properties to support themselves, but also support the museum's mission. And at this time, we provide educational programming for our county schools, for our homeschool groups, and the community as well.
So you're a nonprofit,
Yes, sir.
and folks donated to you as a nonprofit,
Yes, sir.
and you operate and are able to maintain all of these historical sites, largely self-funded.
Currently, yes.
With just, this small amount. I think it's a good model.
Yeah,
So,
I just think it's a good model.
it's a lot of maintenance
It's a
involved.
great model.
there's a lot of
A lot
maintenance,
of
and
people can learn
so
from that model.
that's what we're trying to do, is create businesses that will basically keep the properties up. I can throw 100 fundraisers a year, but there's never enough to maintain 30,000 square foot of building space that was built in the 1800s. It's just,
Any other questions? I really appreciate your time.
Yes, Ryan, are you a local?
yes, sir, born and raised in Sumner County.
Baker Motors?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right.
No,
Thank you, sir.
Sure, thank you.
Hey,
Any
Matt,
questions?
Yes,
I failed to put Ashley's place on the agenda.
we're
She's here.
we're operating outside of rules, so
Okay.
she can go at the end of.
She was supposed to be here at 10:50.
Oh.
She accidentally double booked.
Yeah, and so it was my fault.
Can we do
Well, we're
it before
bumping,
tourism?
we're bumping what's that?
Can you do it right before tourism, maybe,
Appreciate
because
it.
yours might take a little longer.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do that. We'll go, we'll insert her between N and O.
And then Big Cumberland is on page 77. They received two amounts. One is a due that we pay to them for $17,671. They're asking for $20,591. I believe that's based on census numbers, and
It is.
she can
Yeah,
talk to you
it
about
is.
that one. And then the other one's Meals on Wheels. Started out as 2,500. Last year was 5, and this year she's asking for 15. To give you the history, the Meals on Wheels is about 3 numbers below the bottom pink, the dotted line, and then the Mid-Cumberland HRA dues are about 4 spaces above that same bottom pink line going that direction. That helps you locate it. Did everybody find it okay?
Yeah.
Great to be here today. I'm Sharon McDaniel with Mid-Cumberland Human Resource Agency. We are a multi-program agency that has several programs. Transportation, you may see our transportation vans around the county. We also do Meals on Wheels. We do Ombudsman, which advocates for residents in long-term care facilities. We also have in-home services that works with adults who have been abused, either physically, mentally, or financially exploited. So, as he mentioned, we do ask for dues. When we were formed 49 years ago, we're soon to be at 50 years, the state gave us the ability, we are a nonprofit, but when we were formed, the state said we could assess dues. And so that's what we ask for with the dues. They can go for a variety of things. A lot of times they're used as federal match money for the transportation program. And then we're asking for $15,000 for Meals on Wheels. If I could leave anything with you today is the demand has been relentless. If you look prior to COVID, in FY19, we were serving about 48,000 meals. Today, we're gonna probably come in at the end of June around 78,000 meals. So we have had unbelievable demand. It started growing in COVID. We thought maybe we'd get a break when COVID got better, but then inflation set in. And even with that, we still have a waiting list, even with that increase in number of meals we're serving, we still have a waiting list in Gallatin of 30 people. So it is, has been a very, very difficult time with trying to manage the demand.
As a byproduct of bad inflation.
Is your Meals on Wheels, is that mostly towards the elderly that
It
can't,
is,
that
yes.
can't get out of the house?
They have to, right, they have to
afford
be
to
at least
increase it.
60, and
They
then we
can't get the
qualify them with an independent living assessment. So they have to kind of go through several steps before we're, we will provide them a meal.
And this is countywide, right? It's not
Yes.
just, okay, I just
Yeah,
want to
it's
make sure.
countywide. We have 2 meal sites, one in Gallatin, one in Hendersonville.
Are all of your vehicles parked up by the archive?
That, I don't know. Our transportation vehicles,
They've been doing it probably since 2011, maybe, 11, 12.
Do you know how many vehicles you own?
I do not know how many in Sumner County. I'm glad to find out the information.
Yeah, that would be great. I was just curious if we needed that parking for something else, did we have an option?
In 11, 12, the mayor just kind of started letting them use that space because there was a discussion from the budget committee at the time, whether they may need those spaces back versus expansion. But
Yeah.
we've expanded the spots since then, because I believe the commissioner mentioned at the time was actually Jerry Stein, the budget chairman. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a good memory. So,
Yeah,
I
this
believe
has
it was
nothing to
11,
do
12.
with you, it's just,
But I believe that was the discussion that.
Yeah, I'm
the
glad to
mayor-
find
the mayor
out.
The mayor just, I think at the time, just started letting you guys use the parking space here mainly for the transit stuff.
Okay, yeah, and I'm glad to find out. Who would I send the information back to
You
you?
can send it to me.
Okay.
I'll
Okay,
forward it
that'd
on.
be great,
Yeah.
that'd be
So
great.
bottom line here, asking for 10,000 more because of the needs.
The demand, yes, yeah.
Inflation costs and food, I'm sure, that people.
Well, it has, so far it's been reasonable. We may have another increase in July, but it's just, the demand
Well, I
is
mean,
just out of the.
you're getting that demand because of inflation for
Yes,
elderly who
yes,
are on fixed
absolutely.
incomes, therefore they
Yes.
can't meet their needs and they're
Yes.
needing that extra assistance.
Yes, absolutely.
Meals and
Go
Wheels are
ahead.
totally elderly, is what my understanding.
Yeah.
We'll do one more question.
Totally.
That's a real question.
Yeah, it's
Already
60
what
plus.
this our percentage.
What, if you don't mind me asking, Nick, when you have a waiting list, so you say 30 people, are you guys able to refer them somewhere where they can get help? Because if these elderly can't get out of the house to get food, I'm just kind of concerned just from a,
Well, there
from their
really
part
is
of it.
nowhere to refer them to. Some of our counties have churches that have will pick up some of the slack. We do, the churches help in Hendersonville. But in some of our counties, we may have a church that operates a small Meals on Wheels that can help take off some of that demand. But as you know, as I've listened to your discussions prior to mine, you're growing. I mean, and a lot of people, their parents are moving here to be with their kids. And the other thing that's happening is that, baby boomers are aging. And so you're starting to see them come through. So it has been a really challenging time, but especially with the COVID and then with inflation, which probably isn't going to get a lot better with inflation. But I wanted to read something real quick, because I know it's easy when you're sitting here. But one of our seniors is a published poet. Our volunteer got him published. And so I asked him to write a poem just thanking our donors and our volunteers. So it's just real quick. But it'll make you feel good for what you all do. It's called The Giver of Happiness. It's a very wonderful moment, so much joy which one feels when comes a volunteer bringing the Meals on Wheels. So much happiness is given to we who are in our lonely space. How delightful the aroma, the delicious meal, the smile on the volunteer's face. How comforting the feeling of consuming all we need to hold. How wonderful the heavenly bliss of being fed completely, heart, mind, body, and soul. We so gratefully smile as we think of the sponsors of our happiness. We give you thanks with all of our heart. You are the very best. So thank you all for what you do. Our seniors definitely appreciate it.
Thank you.
I got one quick
Oh,
question.
yeah.
What's the, and you may have said it, if you did, I apologize. What percentage, of your revenue or whatnot comes from us versus in total?
So our budget is going to be about 550 something, I believe, for next year. So 15,000 divided by 550,000.
So a small fraction.
Very small.
550?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, thank you.
We do a lot of different fundraisers besides just, we have a direct mail, we send out a lot of different things to try to raise money.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now,
Thank you.
Now the dues are
Teach
based
the
on
fire
the latest
department.
census, correct?
Yes, 2020,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you.
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you. Small business development.
He's on page 77, he's requesting, if you look, he's right above the low pink mark.
Which page?
Got
He
it.
was 5,000, 7,500, and this year he's asking for 10,000.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Charles Alexander, I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center, which is right down the road at Ball State Community College. Not that y'all asked, but I'm a long-term Sumner County resident, got a beautiful wife, 3 kids, ages 14, 11, and 10 that do all the sports. I'm also an unpaid Uber driver. The thing we do is very simple yet very effective. We offer 2 services. First, we offer free one-on-one business coaching that's confidential to anybody that owns a business or wants to start a business. We also offer low-cost or free workshops to those same sets of folks. So let me break this short presentation down for you. I want to explain to you how we calculate our tangible economic impact, where the funding comes from, why it's free, and then I got a couple of smiling faces, even though it's confidential, that let me brag about them so you can see that we help real people. This year, and I've been there for 16 years, and I didn't want to overcomplicate it. I got another 16-year report that I just put together yesterday. It's pretty ugly looking, but it's a lot of big numbers. So last year, met with 150 plus folks. A bunch of people came to workshops. Those aren't nearly as important. But tangibly, we could count on 8 people that started businesses, over $1.5 million in capital formation, which was dollars they invested or borrowed and put into their business, and 28 plus jobs that were created. The reason I say we can calculate it is because if I work with Jeremy and we talk one-on-one, we have a few conversations, Zoom, in person, whatever. He goes out and hires somebody based off of the advice we gave, or he invests money because he was able to go get a loan, or start another side hustle because he's not busy enough. I tell you, Jeremy, the only catch is I've got to be able to put it in a report like this. That means I'm going to follow up with you. And after I follow up with you and validate it, my bosses, because we're not the only small business development center, there's 15 of these all over the state, 800 plus across the country. My bosses at the Elite Center are going to send you a follow-up. And then after they send you a follow-up and you talk to them, then some dude, an economist at Mississippi State, runs some sort of bell curve, tosses out a few for fun, and then we get to count it. So it's triple verified. That's the catch. Now, that is also somewhat underreported because I found out over the years, even though folks are really appreciative of your help, after you follow up with them, I kind of turned into that nerdy high school kid that helped the cheerleader pass the algebra exam, and now we're at prom. She don't remember me. I don't need her to dance. I just want her to look at me, but that's okay. So, a few folks or let me brag on them here. We'll go quickly. Aloha Fish Company that has started as a side hustle bringing in fish from Hawaii. They have now grown that to such a degree that they are able to move into a full-time location. A couple Sumner County ones that you guys may or may not know. Salt Med Spa of Hendersonville helped them get started, grow, all those sort of fun things. And I say that, I'm not taking credit for any of these folks' hard work. They're doing the ugly work, and I'm just getting to chit-chat and give them advice and tag along. Sarah Pascal, who runs it, won the SBA Entrepreneur of the Year for 2021. I got to nominate her for that. And the really cool ones, Scott Hytink and Mary Catherine Oliver, Compass Pediatrics, came to me before they ever got started, walked through the steps, talked through all of the different functionalities. And I'm not a doctor, couldn't play one on TV. I don't remember where they came from. But they have done really well. In fact, they just won, I nominated them for them, SBA Persons of the Year for the state of Tennessee. They just got back from Washington. They got to do I know not all of y'all would have been impressed with that, but they got to go to the White House and do the Rose Garden and everything. And in fact, Monday, the Chamber is going to recognize them and brag about them a little bit. So, our funding primarily comes from the SBA. The only catch of federal money is go get non-federal money, 51 cents on the dollar. 16 years I've been doing this presentation here. I've been doing it, and it's part of the packet I gave you. I didn't bring another one, but I go to 12, 15 different entities. Ball State kicks in a few bucks, Sumner County. Just about every city in the state, every city in our county, get some from Wilson County, banks, chambers of commerce, economic development agencies, utility districts. If they got money, I ask them for it. But we have this report to show that we help you.
How much, what's your total revenue that
No
you get from
revenue.
what's your total donation?
Around a 140 something. You guys have historically been around the 5,000, last year I think $7,500 range.
Okay. And what was the total, did you say, 140?
143, and I'm sorry, close to that. And
Not counting the feds at 51 cents.
well, that's right. So SBA gives us 94 grand, so I've got to go out and raise half of that.
Okay.
And we run tight. I say we a lot, we is me.
So they give you 91, you raise 46,
Yep.
45.5, you add it all together and that's your revenue.
That's right.
Okay. And I just have a quick question on this, just because I'm interested. Capital formation, do you help folks raise money?
No, when I say capital formation, it's an umbrella that says either you borrowed it, invested it.
Oh, okay, so you're counting in the amount, so somebody you assisted,
Yeah,
if they got out and raised $300,000.
That's correct.
Then, okay, got it, I understand.
And how is the SBA involved?
so this is a federal program, been around for 40 years.
Okay,
The money comes from the federal government. They tasked the SBA of putting out the money to 800 plus small business development.
okay.
So they get the oversight on it, which means I have to get accredited through the SBDC plus the SBA. They come check everything.
Okay.
So that's why the SBA is involved. So we get that money from them. The only catch is go out and get some of your own money.
But they don't loan any of these entrepreneurs
Now,
money.
the SBA has SBA loans for any of you who've ever been involved in that. They
Yeah.
don't directly loan money. They will basically co-sign with you at the bank, just in case the bank is
Yeah.
all warm and fuzzy on dealing with a startup.
I've never known anybody who successfully got an SBA loan.
Man, you need to come see me. But I'll tell you, it's not that much easier than a commercial loan.
Right.
It's better for the bank because they guarantee 85.5% of it to the bank in case you skip town.
Does it help with the rates or is it?
Doesn't help the rates, doesn't help the
Just helps the
returns.
bank.
It's just a signature.
Well, because, yeah, and if you didn't have it, as much as we don't all like a bunch of government intervention, banks wouldn't be very incentivized to help, some small business owners sometimes.
Go ahead.
What is your increase, like what is from 5,000 to 15,000, what is necessitating that increase in security?
General operational costs, where about everything we do is, yes, because the more I'm going out and fundraising, the tougher it's been getting, and after 16 years of coming and seeing folks, not everybody is as warm and fuzzy as y'all might be, and they say, hey, we might not want to do this anymore, but it's a very lean and mean operation. It's primarily, my payroll plus the benefits, and I got a contractor that I finally got the SBE to go up. They used to be at 74, and I got them to go up to 94, to have him come in and teach an online workshop every single month that folks absolutely love. They teach them how to build their business through referral and networking, which is truly needed. And the rest leaves literally like $4 or $5 grand for travel and paper and to make sure I got a functional laptop.
So on average, how many businesses do you help start in a year's time?
On average, 8 was low. On average, is much closer to 10 or 12.
Okay.
I really hesitate to overwhelm y'all with too much stuff, but that's my 16-year total.
I'm just looking at, what you're producing,
Yeah.
because you gotta quantify it somehow.
It's your Sumner and Wilson.
So I'm not,
Sumner, Wilson, Trousdale, and Macon.
Sioux Falls County.
so I'm not clear on what the total, I thought you said 140,000, but then I thought I heard somebody said like only 90,000.
Well, that's 94 comes from the federal government.
Okay.
Their rule is to go out and get at least 50% match dollars, real money. So that, I'm doing my math wrong, 94 plus 50% is around 141, 143 total. So 94 comes from the SBA. About 15 other donors, just like you guys, give me.
So we are, so let's
So
say.
they match at 200%. If you raise $100, they match $200.
That's a good way to look at it.
Is that right?
That's right.
But is it the inverse way, but does it actually work that way? So
No.
if we were, so they give you a fixed amount?
Yeah, if you cut me
Oh.
90, I can't go back to them and say, give me more. They pat me on the back and say, how cool,
Well,
Charles?
no, but I
Good
mean,
job."
if you, but.
You get their 94
Are you gonna get the
regardless.
94 regardless?
Well, I get the 94 regardless.
As long as he gets the 40.
If I fail to match it, there's problems.
They'll cut it if you.
They'll cut it next year.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's a, okay,
Is
got
this
it.
40,000 in all 4 counties?
So it is a 2-to-1, but it's kind of like they
I'd
get
have
up
to give you the
front.
donation sheet, it
so
was
of
part of
his
the package I turned in, but it's
45,
Sumner, Wilson,
15.
for sure,
Uh, one
Roseville,
more.
Tom said the 40 we're talking about, that just in some or all the counties?
All right.
The 94 and the 40 some, is that all 4 counties or just some?
when you're saying that, I cover all 4 counties.
So is that amount, the dollar?
Well, who
for all-
funds?
Is the dollar
They
for all the
fund.
counties that you're giving us, is that for all the counties? Is the total you're giving us for all the counties or just some?
No, that's for all the counties.
Let's say, so, okay, that's important, because if so you're covering all the counties.
Right.
45, of the 40, let's call it 46, 45,000, just to make numbers even, we're covering about a quarter of that if we were to give you 15,000. Or sorry, a
15,000.
third,
Yeah,
a
I
third of
didn't ask
that.
for 15, I
Right.
think I asked for 10.
Oh, sorry, 10, so, yeah, so we're covering about a
And
quarter
while
of it, a
that's
little
very
less.
fair,
But how much are the other counties putting in?
well, Wilson County's putting in 2,500, and before we make any bones about that, these numbers, God bless, it's one heck of a lot harder to go over there, because they want to know how much of it's Wilson County. It's not enough. Most of this is Sumner County. And that's because I'm a one-person shop, I don't get over there like I would like to.
So because you're based out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at Ball State, it's real easy for me to serve Sumner County. And when I get out and about, a lot of it's in Sumner County. For me to cross the bridge and then come back, man, it's about half days. I've lost a half day going over
Yeah,
there.
we need. All right, any other questions?
I'd buy anything from him.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks, folks. Thank you.
I think we said we were gonna add in Ashley's place,
They're on page
right here.
77, and they are 3 spots below the pink line that says Sumner County Airport at the top,
The
you know, the
same.
top half of the bottom. And they requested 7,000 last year and 7,000 this year.
Okay.
So they're requesting the same.
All right, good morning, thank you for fitting me in, I'm not sure, we had a little miscommunication. Nope, that's probably not mind waiting at all. I'm Amy Burke Salyers, I am the director with Ashley's Place. We are unique in that we are a nonprofit, but we are a part of state statute that mandates what we call the SIPIT team, which is the Child Protective Investigative Team. So one of the services that we do is coordinate that team with the district attorney's office, with all of our law enforcement agencies throughout the county, child protective services, juvenile court, then there's some other players in that as well. So we provide some services that are very unique to the center, that are services that only us as a child advocacy center can provide to the district attorney and to our law enforcement from that investigation piece. We do child forensic interviews, so we have a full-time forensic interviewer along with myself who conduct those child forensic interviews when we have allegations or concerns, primarily of child sex abuse. Probably 95% of what we work with is child sex abuse, but we also interview children when we have severe physical abuse or witness to a violent act, whether a domestic homicide or something along those lines. We'll interview those children as well. We also provide therapy services, victim advocacy services throughout the prosecution process. That includes filing for victims' compensation, hooking families up to other resources, court prep and court accompaniment when we have children that have to go through the court system and testify. We are super excited. I may sound different 4 months from now because I think this is going to increase our workload. I don't know, probably not a piece of legislation that y'all would have followed, but there are some changes coming down the pipeline. So historically, those forensic interview pieces provide a crucial element to the investigations and the prosecution of sex offenders throughout our county. That is a video that is made obviously at the center. We interview that child. Law enforcement, DCS can watch that interview in an observation room. We're not exposing that child to multiple different adults, multiple different interviews throughout that process. That is then used in, say, criminal courts where it does not replace the child going to court, but the child is on the stand. We play that video for the jury. The jury gets to see that video at the time that that child disclosed, being interviewed or questions asked in a way that's legally defensible, developmentally appropriate, all of those things. So that keeps that child from having to go through the details of all of that abuse again when they're up on the stand. The legislation has changed. That used to just be children under the age of 13 and only child sex abuse. that is now going to be any minor, so under the age of 18. That's going to include sex abuse, severe physical and witness to violence. That is going, it used to be historically just criminal court. They have added criminal, general sessions, juvenile, all of our other courts. So that is going to more than likely increase our workload. We'll see how that plays out. Not that a lot of those children that, even though maybe their forensic interview couldn't be used, we were still servicing those kids and doing those interviews because it's just best practice for kids to have an interview at a place that is child-friendly, not the police department, not the DCS office, not the school guidance counselor office, those kinds of things. But there were, I think, a decent amount of kids that maybe weren't coming through for that forensic interview piece because it wasn't going to serve a purpose, I guess, down the road, that we'll start seeing some of those, I think, as well. We have seen an increase over the last probably year and a half of, well over, I think the number, well over about 150 severe child abuse cases. And that's going to come with population growth. The more folks that come in, those cases are going to rise. That's just the nature of it. 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. I always like to use the visual of a classroom when you figure we have about 30 children in a classroom, and you think about just the number of schools and classrooms that we have throughout the county. That's a lot of kids in our county, and there's a large number that goes unreported. When we look at statistically, only 38% of children disclose the fact that sexual abuse has occurred. We're almost always dealing with delayed disclosure, and usually in a matter of years. I mean, it's not uncommon to interview a child, and this is something that happened 2 years ago, but maybe my mom and boyfriend have broke up, and that person is out of the picture, and that child now feels safe to say something to somebody. That's very typical of what we're dealing with. And when we look at our court system around that forensic interview piece, as far as providing that, again, we're the only agency that can provide that forensic interview. We are, last trial that we had, which was a case of mine, it was 4 years old. These 2 children have been waiting 4 years to have their day in court and for that trial to be resolved. So when you're looking at a child that a lot happens in a 4 years, and kids grow, and they, little 6-year-old child at the time of that disclosure on that video, for that jury to see that, the child that's sitting on the stand 4 years later is going to look very different. So that forensic interview and those video pieces play a huge part, as I said, not only just in the investigation and getting to the prosecution, but also in the prosecution and just, less stress on kids, even though it's going to be a stressful situation regardless, but is huge in that factor. And that's probably the key, even though we're providing a variety of services, that's probably I think the key service that probably services when we look at our other agencies, our law enforcement. We are coordinating with 8 different law enforcement jurisdictions across our county. Of course, when you look at a part of White House and a small part of, Goodlettsville, obviously Hendersonville, the Sheriff's Department, Portland, those are going to be our bigger ones. But there's just a variety of coordination that goes along in the work that we do at the center. As was mentioned, we're not asking for an increase this year. That $7,000 is the same that we have asked for, the last several years. Not to say, as I laid the groundwork, we do see some more work coming our way. I don't know what next year will look like, but this year it just was not necessary, and so I wasn't going to ask for money that. Not that we wouldn't love to have it, if anybody wants to offer up some extra, but.
So what is 7,000, what's that % of your total?
We are looking at, I need to do some state changes and some legislative stuff around funding. I'm in the process of doing an amended budget for the upcoming fiscal year. What is that budget operating? It's like $259,000 is our current operating budget. If you'll notice the one on, we did get some of the, the state and local COVID relief, yeah, some of that.
They got some ARPA for this restart money. I think you were out there closed down.
Yeah, and we're still working on some of that. That is all very specific and earmarked for, additional technology and.
The 290 is your typical revolving, is your typical.
The 259?
The 259.
Yeah, I mean, and that's paying salaries,
yeah.
Occupancy. Our building, the city owns our building. We are there rent free, so they are providing that as far as from an in-kind standpoint. So even when we look at salaries, we have a large salary line item, but every one of us is providing direct services. That's my forensic interviewer, my victim advocate.
So everybody is like actually interacting with
Yes.
your.
How many employees?
And wearing many hats. I have three, myself and my advocate, so three of us total as employees. Our therapist we are contracted with, but she sees our kids in-house at the center. It's just that we have got that on a contract basis, so she's technically not an employee, but we are the only thing she does, so.
So there, with her, there's three.
With her, there would be four of us.
Oh, there would be four.
Where's the therapist? Does she work out of another?
No, she works out of our center.
Out of your
It's just
center?
we're on a contracted, we've got a contract.
With who?
Her name is Sean Lilly.
No, I mean, who's the contract with? Is she?
With
she's
her
part
as
of
an
the
individual
contract?
provider.
Okay, she's.
Yeah, she's a
part of the
licensed
contract.
individual provider. And all of her therapy budget is covered by the National Children's Alliance. That is our accrediting body, so we are fully accredited with the National Children's Alliance out of DC, and then United Way of Sumner County. Those two make up the therapy
We
budget.
probably need to step, but I just wanna, you guys, did y'all move, you guys got a new building, didn't you guys move into a new building?
No, I
No,
wish.
We give them carpet.
Yeah, gave them carpet.
Oh, that's what, okay.
You gave them ARPA money.
Where's
Yeah,
the, where's the building at?
We gave them.
We were shut down in April, but we were by Homeland Security, we were considered
That's right.
essential employees. So we
Where's
were
your building?
working and we would come in on emergency
Where's the
basis.
location?
Where's your building?
315 West Smith Street,
Okay.
out back behind Wendy's, the original Wendy's off Main.
Any questions?
So is that
Gallatin.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, so we are stationed here it's housed here in Gallatin,
Okay,
obviously
so
serving all of
Gallatin
Sumner
is
County.
the, okay.
Any other questions? Thank you,
All
ma'am.
right, thank you.
Tourism.
They're on page 76. They are, last year they were 717,334. This year they're asking for 738,854, which is a 3% increase.
Okay.
Hey guys, I'm Judy Montgomery. I've had the honor of serving as the treasurer for our tourism board for the past 5 years. And we are, like you said today, asking for $738,540. It's actually a little bit less than we received last year, but no, it's about $60,000 less than we received last year because of special events. Just FYI, so that $738,540 is less than 53% of the $1.4 million brought in 2022, just for the hotel and motel tax alone. This year, we're already $67,000 above that 1.4 million, and we've still got 3 years to go, so I think we're doing really good things over there. Zoe handed out a few packages, so just a few things to say. How does tourism help Sumner County? Well, in 2021, because we're always a year behind on what those statistics are, visitors that came into our county spent $176 million in our gas stations, our restaurants, our small businesses, things to that nature. Of course, they obviously supported jobs and different things like that. Plus, Sumner County received an additional $14 million in state and local sales tax. So you can see how tourism really enhances our county and how it helps us. Hurts my nerves doing for you guys, so I really don't even know what to say to you other than what I've already said. We're definitely in transition this year. We've got some really exciting things planned, earmarked, new employees and things of that nature. So I guess I'm gonna turn it to you guys and answer any questions you may have.
Ask a quick question.
Go ahead.
I projected your revenue, you know, the economy's somewhat uncertain, and this year does look good, but your director recently left, and looking at the revenues, my concern is, you know, like last year, you asked for some additional funding from the hospital, but for like a fishing tournament. Without the director, is there somebody up there right now setting up the tournaments and stuff? Or are we
Yes.
looking at next year's revenue to take a slump? Because several years back, there was a huge slump in the hotel motel between directors, and then the last time you changed directors, after that one, there was a small slump. So my question is, what's the revenue probably going to look like next year?
And those are good questions. I'm actually prepared to answer that. So not only do we has our tourism board worked diligently to earmark a potential director to bring in, our office has not even skipped a beat. I have the marketing expert here, Zoe. She has done a phenomenal job making sure that we're still out there in front of people and getting these different events scheduled for next year. And I have Kelly here, who is pretty much all things tourism office, and they've done a phenomenal job at keeping us going forward and continuing to book tours and things to that nature. But I'm real confident in who we think will be coming in and taking the helm and keeping us moving forward. At this moment, And it's obviously, at this point, I'm just guessing, and you know, I've got to be honest with you, but at this moment, we do not see a slump. We still have plenty of things already planned. And a lot of this too, a lot of the money we're asking for starting July 1 goes towards events that really are going to happen in the first part of 2024 anyway, the January and February events.
So you're already scheduled the events without the director?
And you're not seeing any downturn right now?
I'm sorry.
You're not seeing any downturn right now
We are not seeing any downturn at all.
You have a lot of new hotels running, so I think so.
Mayor,
New hotel construction.
did I understand right
Yes,
too,
we do have
if
two
they
new
need to
hotels.
There's
lean
some
on
of the stuff
Barry
coming
a
back, I
little?
believe, on Age National.
Can-
I know they built some hotels too, but I believe you're pulling part of it to stay in Nashville back now. Is that what you're seeing? That's what I think you're seeing.
That actually is kind of question unqualified to answer.
But you know, a lot of the leads used to have on the edge of Nashville, down into Madison and over in the Goodletts field. And I know they built some hotels over in there too, but because of proximity of prices, I think the new hotels have probably, for your tournaments, migrated part of the stuff back down into Sumner.
Yeah, I mean, regional tourism is a big part of what we do. We're very fortunate to be Nashville's neighbor. So, for instance, there's so much going on this weekend in Sumner County. We have 2 fishing tournaments, we have a ball tournament, we have a soccer tournament, a softball tournament, all those things that we've brought in. And yesterday I received a call that our hotels are full. Nobody can get anything. A gentleman called me yesterday and said there was 1 hotel room available and it was $300.
And was that for the fishing
In
tournament?
Sumner County.
Was
It's
that-
a
was that
combination
large?
of
I mean,
all the
with-
things that are going on this weekend.
So it's helped you guys.
It's a fun.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Well, the thing that's helped out one reason your hotel motel tax has grown so much, they put all these hotels. There's several.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they built it because the demand is there, right? I mean, if there
Yeah,
was
and then what happened
demand.
earlier with the tournaments is people were staying at the edge of Goodlettsville, Madison, and over the edge of Davidson, because there was no hotels.
We have.
And then also you picked up the bed and breakfast, is it bed and breakfast?
Yes.
That's-
We have a couple of ball tournaments that we end up putting people all the way out at Opryland because we have not had enough hotels in the past. So having this extra one is going to really help us there. And just basically kind of running off of that, on one of those pages you have there, how does tourism help Sumner County? I ran some statistics, I'm a financial analyst, so that's the first thing that got my attention. I ran some statistics, sorry. So Sumner County ranked 14th in our state for tourism. 176 million brought in with 1,000 hotel rooms. If you compare us to Williamson County, Rutherford County, both of them having more things to attract, more bottom line attractions. So Rutherford County, number 7 in the state, has 5,500 hotel rooms. We have 18% of those hotel rooms. Our 1,000 is 18% of their 5,500, and yet we're running 17%. So we are bringing in as much tourism as some of these other counties. Williamson, for example, has 6,000 plus hotel rooms. We have 70% of the number of hotel rooms they do, and we're bringing in the same 17% revenue based on our hotel rooms. And if you look at the attractions and the things available in those bigger counties that make their tourism higher, we are producing the same results as some of these bigger counties with far more, and I think that's something. that
Williamson's got an interstate and we've got a lake.
We do have a lake.
It's a big difference.
We do have a lake.
Makes a difference.
Any other questions?
And here's the
Go
thing
ahead.
too, I was checking with the mayor before, Barry Young, the outgoing tourism director, had offered his assistance to them, and he's not charging a $210,000 consulting fee. I had to get that after he offered his help.
In all seriousness, speaking to the stability going forward, we do have the assistance of Barry Young because he still is in Sumner County. And also the entire staff stayed on board. So as we move through this transition, it is stable. And and to the credit of Barry Young, he's not charging.
So I'm going to do something else that's equal. I'm going to say something that is maybe equally rare here. It is not very often. I mean, I can't think of the last time, but sometimes I'm wrong. And when I first ran, just kidding. But when I first ran for office, one of the points that I criticized very heavily was how much extra we were spending on the tourism board. And that, you know, because we were spending considerably more than was mandated by the state, and I'm just clearly a penny pincher, which is why I'm sitting here. But, once I started digging into the numbers on it, you guys produce an ROI. So, I just wanted to put that out there for the record, that, you know, I wrote that article over a year ago, and I don't think I would write the same thing now. And I'll just leave that out there, and I won't charge you $210,000 for saying
Can I
that.
ask a quick question, since we're talking about revenues and the director? Are you guys doing a national search for the director? 'Cause mine's concerned in the revenues, so I'm kind of wondering what kind of director you're hiring.
So, we did not do a national search for a director simply because our real goal was to find someone who knew and loved Sumner County the way we do. And I feel very confident that we've found that person that has tourism experience, knows the county, very well educated and prepared to take the role. So I don't want to disclose too much just yet because we haven't made the offer to this person. But I stand here with full confidence that we are headed in the right direction. We're going to put somebody in place that's going to be able to not only take what we have and move forward, but bring fresh new ideas to the tourism office and go in directions maybe we haven't been able to go in before.
So you're gonna have an experience, you know, you guys are bringing an experienced director from a regional search or what are you doing? Just curious, because I'm worried about the revenues of what
Sure.
we're gonna produce.
Sure, and
I
I mean,
mean,
that's
we
fair.
may be getting a little bit outside, but I mean.
Well,
I-
I'm
it's a
worried
good-
about the revenues, there's a lot of revenue over here on your revenue stream.
I get it.
Large, so you probably want some confidence in what's coming in to produce that revenue.
We will be fine. We will be fine.
I mean, I'm down with it, I just, like, is this the right body?
Well, that's fine.
You're saying there's dips every time, so
Well,
that's a
yeah,
problem.
well, I can say.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, every time it's a
If I go
dip,
back
so
to
we're
8,
losing.
9, and 10, and I've
Just looking
had
at
long
historical
histories
trends.
of records, I can find something that does not correspond with the economy where we had a director that changed, and it was several back, and there was a huge dip.
Okay.
When Barry came back in, there wasn't, and I know some of it's Barry, some of it's other things, Barry's doing a good job, I like Barry. But right now, my concern is, and maybe you guys have got to handle this time, because it sounds like you do, but if you're not setting up tournaments and you're not doing anything for a long period while you're hunting a director, you're gonna have a slump in revenues. Number two, if you bring in a director that's not experienced, that has to do startup, you're potentially looking to slump in revenues. My revenues in here are based somewhat conservative because of the economy and you're switching directors, but when you guys start looking at revenues, you probably need some kind of confidence of what they've got over there, the way we can see what we're gonna produce. And this revenue is what I'm more worried about than average because there is a lot of changes.
So the one good thing is that, as Mayor said, I spoke to Barry 2 nights ago because I've never stood in front of you guys. It was like, okay, tell me what I've got to be prepared for. So anytime we've needed anything, he's just a phone call away and he's helped us. So that's been one really good thing. As well, in the past, and especially when you're talking the 08, 09, not only were you dealing with an economy that was struggling, there was a pretty wide gap between the director leaving and a new director coming in. So we're going to be filling that gap within 60 to 90 days. And like I really want to reiterate, this staff has not missed a beat. They are still out there talking to people. The things that Barry had on the agenda when he decided to make the transition, they're still out there pushing and trying to get those things in. I don't think you're going to see any type of decrease in our revenue, but it surely will not be substantial.
Got it.
And I was just asking on the revenue side for when you evaluate.
I guess. One just quick info or just piece of info. So this is being recorded, will be posted tomorrow, so your description of who you're looking at, you may just keep that in mind, so.
That's why I'm being very careful.
Yeah, a lot of people will be watching.
Yeah, no.
Well, her description's fine as this mic.
Yeah,
I don't, it doesn't give me any hints, but
No, I get it.
I didn't apply for it.
We're just
That's
going
why
to.
we should have this discussion.
All right. Any other questions here? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. We are done with, we're up to the workshop, and we're a little bit behind schedule, but I think we've got, so we've suspended the rules here, so I think we've got a couple options. We could, I feel like instead of getting into the workshop where we're trying to actually work the budget, we could just go ahead and pick off either A, B, or C, county mayor, finance, or county attorney, and try to get some of these done before lunch.
I think the mayor may be, doing them order may be the easiest.
I mean, just, because here's what I think is a good plan. Get through as much of it, ideally, if we can get through this, what have we got between now and?
Let's go.
Yeah.
I think
Get
you
it
know
through
we're back
then
from
before,
Mayor's-
before lunch.
tackle the hardest part of the mayor first. Yeah, lunch is at 12:30, so the mayor's capital is probably one of the hardest ones, so you might wanna look at it first. Cause he's got several requests.
All right, then let's just do A, B, C in turn.
And page 97 is where his capital is started.
Oh, is it coming? Well,
What was this workshop gonna be? 11:20 to 12:30?
And then lunch and
it
then.
was a little bit of time to try to do what we did yesterday to pick some of this off, but I think looking at it, it would have been better to do it this way, which is why I'm calling that audible. If you just had it down. Well, while we're going, David, could you do yours? 'Cause he's waiting for Miss Norfleet.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, can we
Let's
just do
go, 'cause
yours?
Mine's pretty simple, and it's on
Okay.
page number 30. Do you wanna do county commission first, or do you wanna do mine? Cause can't work with county commission, I've been talking to Mr. Hyde.
Either one.
Let's just start with county commission, which is on page 28.
Okay.
And, since it's actually this is the budget committee, and it's the commission's budget, a couple of things I was kind of talking to Mr. Hyde. Number one, even though I put it together for you guys, maybe want a little more involvement in formulating this one, because it does have things like dues and memberships that's been paid by former county mayors, and you may want to look at the details. One thing that did change significantly is it went down $82,000 on retirement. There was a possible retirement assessment that we understood we were gonna get. Well, they have not charged us for that, so I did not include that into the budget. That's where TCRS told us we did not have to pay retirement on the county commissioners. I argued with them, even called them, came back, 4, 5, 6 years later, because I was quite upset about it. And we were told by TCRS that their people were mistaken by the new group, and that we may get a back assessment, so we put it in the budget last year. It's based on the percentage. The only other things up through here, there's no real changes. I didn't put $1,600 in there based on the budget committee's discussion. That's for I think it's mental health evaluations. You've got 3 of them this year so far, and there's nowhere for those to be budgeted. They're kind of sporadic, and I believe there's $400 a piece. Is that correct? That's what I was thinking. The only other item I would kind of note is there's been just some discussion about travel. And the question is not for actual travel like mileage or meals. Do you guys want to do any kind of training classes? We're calling travel, like tuition, if somebody wants to go to a class to be trained to look at grants or some other issue. That was a discussion earlier, and I don't know if there's a consensus or what the committee feels like.
Can I just say what I think of it?
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
No, we can have a quick discussion on it, but then we'll deliberate later.
Okay.
But go ahead.
No, I mean, real quick, in my opinion, and this was several months ago, I complained about using money for any class is that we take. We all signed up for this position. We went over this several months ago. The county pays us a $500 stipend a month. We do not need to go to the taxpayers for another dime. If we want to take classes, that should come out of our pockets. I know it's a small amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but on principle alone, I can't see going to the taxpayers for that.
That's why I went back to get you guys' opinion, because it's your budget and I'm just working.
I mean, I do think I think there are different opinions on this here.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
so we'll discuss it. I don't think this is the right time to deliberate, but.
And that's why I asked right
Yeah.
now. I have it in there right now with nothing, but I wanted to put that out we can look at
Okay,
it.
what's the pay cut for us? Is
That was, here's the rule. Last year, there was a raise put in for county commission. I mentioned to the former commissioners, anytime you give a raise to the county commission, it has to be done by the former commission before the election, by statute. So the raise that was in there last year, even though they put it in the budget, could not be given to the commission because they didn't adopt the resolution.
So then why didn't we get it in September?
Because the resolution wasn't adopted by the former commission back in August. July, August. The commission
The
only had.
former commission approved it.
They approved the budget, but they have to actually approve a resolution, and I actually mentioned that to, some of the budget committee members, that nobody wanted to pursue it after they adopted the budget.
Okay. That's fine, I'm just trying to figure this out. Again, it's $20.
And we can have the legal to go pull that, if you don't mind, you can pull that statute on the county commissioner's raise. 'Cause there's actually one up there, and it requires them to.
It's
it actually-
prospective.
Are you salty over that
Yeah, for the
20
next-
bucks?
No.
Basically, they put it in the
Someone asked me if I
budget,
got,
but
if it bumped up.
They
I
put it in
said,
the
I don't
budget, but then they never adopted the resolution, and I'm not gonna say anything, I think there's because there was a slight change between the budget time but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what the
That's
reason was they
fine.
wouldn't follow through.
We're good with this.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm just trying to, I know my quote, my paycheck never reflected an increase, so someone actually asked me about it, and I was like, well, I think it did, when I went back and looked, and it hadn't, so.
They never
Okay.
adopted the resolution, so even though it was budgeted.
I got you.
You guys can't do it for yourselves, but you can do it for the next cycle.
Yeah,
they
which
adopted
is
the
what,
budget
which
and
is
they-
what I thought we
Well, they
did.
adopted the budget, but then they wouldn't follow
That
through
is
on the
smart. That is a
resolution.
smart question. I mean, if we're leaving and outgoing, can we like sign ourselves up as contractors and pay ourselves?
So basically, when you're
We can
leaving.
get it down to 0 in our last meeting.
Basically, when you guys are leaving for the next commission, you can adopt a raise. That's pretty much where it's at.
Or
Officially on the floor, and there's rules that have to be on the agenda, and there's, and he can check to make sure. This is all from memory, so he can check from what happened several months ago. But my understanding is it has to be separate on the agenda, and it has to be a resolution. What the commission did last time was adopted it in the budget, but then when I went back to mention to them to put it on the agenda as a resolution to go follow through, nobody wanted to really do it. That's all I can say. Once I mentioned it to, so I dropped it. I mentioned it to the commissioners, and
all right.
they weren't willing to do that.
Well,
We're good.
We're good.
Number
Let's,
two is you got dues and memberships or certain things. Well, this one right here, let's talk about the next rate. It's kind of staying in order. This one is for the audit that we get each year. It's based on the census, which happened last year, but it also allows an increase, and I believe the increase said, yeah, it says that Tennessee, code annotator out there allows them up to a 3% increase. They won't tell me about that until, they haven't sent me a letter yet. They usually send me a letter like late April. So that's that, plus, it can be a max 3%, so I rounded it to, it can be up to 3% per capita on the census, so I actually put 3.5 because the capita numbers are kind of very.
Who's that money going to?
It goes for them to do the audit to the state.
So we're paying the comptroller.
Yeah, basically, comptroller audit us with their audit firm, or basically their internal firm, so we pay part of the cost. It costs more than that to get an external one. And by statute also, we have to be approved not to use them, so we really don't have a choice.
And David, you mentioned the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. We never voted on that. How did it get in?
We did.
Yeah, it got voted.
We did 16 or
Yeah,
17.
It got voted right. This is the whole thing. Back in 16, 17, it got voted. I was told by the mayor and the law director at the time that TCRS told them that we didn't have to contribute to that it would be adjusted through the actuarials. Well, I done it in Greene County, and I was 100% sure that was wrong. So me, the law director, and the mayor actually called TCRS. They repeated that to me, and then I had my payroll person call on the phone when we set it up and asked them. They repeated again that we didn't have to pay anything. Well, we're going down the road, and some of the commissioners had enough time they were going to retire, so they started calling TCRS, and there's no credits. So I had my payroll clerk to call TCRS, and I got on the phone. Well, they had a new division. They said, we're sorry, but you guys were told wrong. So to fix that, you're going to have to start paying the percentage going forward, and we may or may not give you a back bill. We may adjust it through the actuarial, we may bill you back. And I told them I prefer it to be through the actuarial, though, when they get a bill back. They said they couldn't tell me either way, and we were in the budget, so that's where the $80,000 difference last year for back payments if we had to pay them.
Do we actually help people drawing?
Probably. I'd have to go. I don't know if we could really find out.
It would only be a few.
But it wouldn't
right
affect you.
now.
Like Mr. Hyde, you're retired from TCRS already, so we don't pay on you. If you're,
Can't have
say, a
any-
school teacher or sheriff's department
can't get
employee,
it.
we won't pay on them neither. The only ones we'll pay on is anybody that's not a county, school employee, or retired. And my argument was we shouldn't have had to pay on anybody that was less than 5 years. But if there's a break in service, I think less than 7, then it accumulates. So they told us we had to pay on everybody that didn't meet that.
Well, I'm not going to participate in it, but
You know, you
I
can't.
don't think
Well, you
that,
could if you-
Well, you'd lose your.
I didn't.
It'd be
I didn't
dumb
ask
for you.
the question because I wanted to participate. I asked the question because if we are having an expense with that, can we get out of this?
You'd have to unenroll the entire county. I've already talked to the state about this.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have.
It was a one-way street.
Yeah, there's a few changes you can make, like we're non-participating, You could make it where like new employees had to pay the participating or where the modified, but some of the existing employees, there's a couple where it's hard to change or to impossible. And then also, once you make a change, it's pretty much you can't change it back. So anytime you do TCRS, we can contact them, but those changes are very hard and they take time and they kind of go prospectively. And then once you make the change, you can't undo it. So you got to make 100% sure that's what you want to do too.
So who all is drawing from her?
We should.
I don't know who's drawn. I know who would pay toward. Like just you, Mr. Baker, we would pay toward yours.
Yeah.
So
You gotta be
you've been
over
here
60.
more-
If I wanted to
You've
get
been
$5 a
here.
month.
You've already vested. You've been here a commissioner for you've been
9
here
years.
over 8
9
years.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So-
5 years, you have to
so
be a
right,
commissioner for
from
5
that
years.
16,
Or a school board
17.
member, this also applies to
Also,
school
school
board.
Yeah,
board
it applies to
members are
school board
dipping into
too.
the
Oh.
taxpayers' pockets too for.
Oh, yeah, it
Yeah,
was,
this extends to the school board according to that resolution.
yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
I mean, when does it
you, when you
stop?
retire, you will be doing a
you have
small
to enroll
retirement.
the
It's
entire county and start
very
over.
small.
Oh,
Can we
I
do
know.
that?
It's-
I mean-
I don't even know why we.
If you call
But
TCRS, you
the
can-
resolution wasn't,
it went forward.
it was tied to more than just,
It went forward. It did not go back and pick up service credits. So like when Mr. Isabel was a commissioner, he won't get any credit for that. It only
what
went
about
forward.
Mayor Holt?
You guys had to actually get an actuarial done and pay the costs for that to back up those back service credits.
So even though he was still.
Now, the way the
County
resolution
mayor.
reads, technically you could do it, but it would require an actuarial and you guys to fund the back payments on that. Because they're not.
So this is only, so what we.
Forward from 16.
But it was specific to county commissioners and school board members.
And it was from that point forward.
Correct, okay, yeah, I don't.
Because there was a large discussion on this,
I don't, I'm trying to remember.
Back-
why that-
back during
What
the
I'm
budget
hearing
cycle
is that
last year.
ultimately, there's not much realistically we can do about this.
you might be able to remove it for new commissioners next time or going forward, but it's going to be, the
It's
amount of
automatic
money's involved,
enrollment.
right? I don't even know if
It's
you can.
automatic enrollment from
Right.
the state.
But I don't know if you could remove for the next ones coming in,
Let's,
I don't know. It's
let's
gonna be
go
hard.
ahead and, I mean, unless we wanna
Yeah,
keep
I mean,
it's
hammering on
automatic.
It's gonna be
this.
very difficult.
Let's
to
just
unwind
keep
that. It's
stepping.
impossible. The other thing you might wanna do, Beth, we can do it now, you've got dues and memberships up here, and since it's your budget, we can actually go to Munis really quickly with the ERP, and you can see what's paid through that if you want to.
That's okay.
Do you wanna evaluate or just leave it alone?
Let's just go.
Okay, so let's go down to finance, and it is on page number 39. And these are all based on the 6%, based on the County Elected Officials Association, so we just did ours to line it up with everybody else's.
What page number?
And then the actual salary
39,
sheets are on page, it says page 4. It's not very far back.
What's on the sheet?
The salary sheet where the calculations are. We go through there, that's the employees. Mine right now is based on that 6%, but my contract, the way it's written, if we decrease the cost of living, mine doesn't go any lower than what the station's judgment for the contract, it says the greater of. But right now, that's more than that, and I know it's, I'm assuming it's going down. The second one, I have 2 employees, and I have a request for, in addition to cost of living, and I can go into details of the benefits clerk. I've actually had 4 people through that position in the last 2 years, is that correct? And I've actually, to try to keep things up, I've taken people out of purchasing temporarily, people off the front, just to try to keep this group up because it's gotten so bad. This position right here is the one that does all the benefits. And we have one downstairs that does just the front end enrolling of that. And they call them, what was it, HR specialist, strategist, and they're actually paying them $65,000. This person right here, we have at 39 and whatever you give them. But right now, the complaints that I got from the people that quit, one retired, so just disclose that. The next one says the job was too hard and too complex for what they were getting paid and too stressful. The next one said the same thing. And then they also had issues with another department that I could understand.
Was this the one you're now talking about as far as increasing?
Well, yes. And then the other one down here is actually the payroll manager. And what I'm asking you to move that to the same as the MS4 manager, which is underpaid, and this is this employee, and I'll give you a exact description. This employee position requires a bachelor's degree in finance. They're the person that does all of the Munis and Chronos, and they're doing all their implementation. And right now, this person's actually had a couple of job offers and decided to stay with us because they thought we would at least try to fight for them to make sure they're treated fairly. That was kind of, is that the best way to put the comment? If they actually foregoed a job offer knowing, I might not be able to do anything, I was honest with them, but I told them I would at least ask because to see what could be done. So that one right there said that would be very hard to replace. That one's actually the one that manages payroll. Then sets up the rules for use, or your use payroll, probably knows some supervisors, 3 employees and a half right now. Well, I don't have to be supervising them, but we're waiting to be down here anyway.
So,
But other than that, I've asked to get rid of the part-time library manager and actually put overtime. We used the overtime this year, and the reason I'm asking to leave the overtime is we actually needed to finish implementing the Munis and the Chronos. We've not asked for any staff to do that. We've been working on the project several years, and you heard from the circuit court clerk. She's dying to get it, but our problem is we still need to write policies and procedures for the other one. And this same payroll manager here is working a lot of overtime too. That's where some of the overtime, just to disclose that, and a couple of other staff members. And just like I told Circuit, I don't believe at this point if I work those staff members any more overtime that there won't be turnovers to do with that, so we're really tired, just to be honest. And the thing that's got us there, we're actually implementing 2 software packages right now. We're about, what'd you say, the payroll pretty much done, set right the procedures for it. Chronos we're probably 65% done probably. And we've got the majority of employees on there, but you guys have, I think, around 13 personnel policies. And it's by statute, it's not a choice that the county's making. By statute, they can have these personnel policies, so payroll and your timekeeping is very convoluted because you've got 13 personnel policies. We've got about 4 of them embedded in your largest departments in there, and several smaller ones right now.
So
the next largest one we have will probably be highway or circuit court, actually, she's ready.
So bottom line on this one, $73,000 you're asking extra. Of that, the majority.
What, click on 73, I'm not, good.
I'm looking at total.
Oh, that's everything cost.
Everything, yeah,
insurance,
and all of it. And so I'm going over, and I'm just breaking this down. The majority of that is coming from the 6% COLA, this 46,000 plus the 9,000, which is used. And then that's the standard 6% COLA that got applied everywhere, plus this 9,074 and the 2,600. That is where the rest of this is, plus I guess your overtime here.
And then there's 1,256 under operational, and here's kind of where we're at.
I'm just looking for like, that covers probably 90% of your ask.
But I can tell you why we're not asking for more operational. Sometimes out here we went to direct deposits, that cut a lot of our cost out. And we do everything we can on P cards, which gets rid of your checks, your mailings, and all that cost. This year I was hoping to make that 0 or maybe even negative, but what we ran into because of the copy, the copy cost right now because of the new rules about making copies of agendas and stuff, that's what's really kept us from decreasing into that. Our copy cost is about $6,000 more this year than it is last year.
Got it.
So by us automating things, we were hoping to save money, but some of that's been eaten by this printing cost. I think is it 6 we've transferred so far into printing. It's very.
David, are accountants / bookkeepers, are they outsourced?
No, that's the actual payroll.
That's actual payroll staff.
So right now, my staff, somewhere around 50% of them actually require degrees because they have to have an understanding of accounting that we can't find. It would be better to have even a larger number, but the more degree accounting people you have, the higher the cost.
How many people do you have in your department?
Counting me,
Yeah.
twelve in all.
12? Okay.
12 in all, that's for payroll, benefits, purchasing, accounts
So,
payable, budget.
Can I ask this question?
Everything. Takes
No.
time.
Are you done? I've never met with your question. I didn't mean that in a mean
No,
way.
I haven't said.
All right, so I realized I was like, are you done? No, that's not. And this is maybe a harsh question to ask, but what is the and HR isn't in here to kind of say the other side of the story. What is when a new employee comes on board? What is HR doing, and what are you doing? Like,
They basically fill out a packet and then they send it up to us, and then our benefits and payroll actually evaluate it. And if there's issues, we send it back, or we still basically fixing it on, which we're probably still fixing most of the issues. So right now, if there's an issue with insurance, such as they're not qualified, they don't meet some of the requirements, or there's a payroll issue with policy, then we deal with it.
Where does that human being, when they're, because I'm trying to figure this out, like, where does that human being spend the majority of their time when they're coming, when a new employee is coming on board? Like, what is that experience?
The experience is they fill out a manual paperwork, and then it's passed up. The way I originally envisioned it through the ERP process is what it would work the best is there's what's a ERP system called self-service. So the way I think that it would work the best is if HR, whoever's doing the enrollment, would actually have through iPads the people enroll and image the stuff, and then we electronically send it up to payroll, and then we verify it that way. Right now, there's a large amount of manual paperwork filled out down here and sent upstairs, and then we look through to see if there's errors, because some of the comments would just not to be crude, but not from the director, but from the other staff, was that they're basically just doing the paperwork, they're, what was the word, paperwork issues. Because when we ask them questions about issues, we're basically dealing with a lot of the issues still. Like if there's an issue with enrollments enrolled wrong, and they're not qualified for health insurance, or there's something that we believe is a violation of the personnel policy, then we deal with all that.
So, and again, this is not meant to be punitive or anything, I'm just genuinely trying to understand, like, 2 years ago, we brought in HR, what workload was taken off of your plate?
They were supposed to.
None?
They're supposed to, here's kind of the whole purpose of HR and where we're at, just to be, they were supposed to do the front-end enrollment, help with the open enrollment, help with FMLA and complaints. The biggest push for them was because what was happening at the time, which is very expensive to the county, when employees complained, they would go up to legal. If it ended up being a lawsuit, legal had to remove themselves.
And I'm just asking,
And
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
ask the
fix
same
that.
question of the mayor's office, and I'm gonna ask the same question of the.
What we really need help
law
with is,
office.
what we really on our end need help with is just the enrollment portion, one from them or an employee, one or the other. And if we deal with an employee, then, one of my recommendations is we get rid of the paper and we start moving toward employee self-service and electronic. That was my vision from day one. We have modules to do it.
But I mean, to play devil's advocate here, I mean, who, if that employee has a question about something as they're being onboarded, I mean,
They
the
usually
argument here is
call or
you
email us. They call or
do
email
they
us.
call you guys, or is there, that single funnel through HR?
They talk to the person HR, and they'll call and email us. I think we're getting the vast majority of the questions and complaints and issues.
Okay.
They may call HR, but a lot of times
It just-
usually gets funneled to finance.
Funnel to us, or HR calls us.
All right.
Chairman Shuff, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it the same for all county employees, like even the elected officials? Or do they have someone in their spot that does their pay, so all county employees?
All
can be-
payroll comes through this office, through my
Right,
office.
but I'm talking about like on the onboarding part.
Well, if they need to come in, the first thing that needs to happen is when an employee starts, they need to have an I-9 filled out when they start.
Correct.
That's the number one thing. And then after that, you've got a little bit of time, but the best thing is right before an employee starts or their day, they need to come in here that day, do an I-9 and the paperwork to make sure they're qualified to work. Before that, I'm not sure, HR may be involved some in the recruitment process, that'd be more of a question.
Well, that's a question I'm gonna ask the mayor's
But that's
office.
completely.
But,
outside.
because again, none of this is designed to be, I'm just trying to.
If we
get
have the staffing, we
efficiency.
can very easily handle the enrollment, and if we got some cooperation, because it's not approved on the FMLA any that I can tell, it's actually got worse. We could improve the FMLA, we can handle that. The thing is, the two issues came up, we didn't have the staff, we were getting behind, so they were supposed to help with enrollment, and there's 2 or 3 things we need a little bit of help. And then number 2, it was supposed to stop the issue of the stuff going directly to legal. The plan was the person from risk management, because the schools left, was no longer a full-time employee. So that person was gonna spend half their time on enrollment also. So you're gonna have a director and a half-time clerk down here for enrollment. And then the other 50% of that employee was to be working in risk management. That was the whole plan for HR from the initial.
Would you,
Go ahead.
Would you feel that your workload has increased because of the HR, or just having to do double work, or is that a?
I don't think it's helped us on our end for enrollments, I'll be honest.
Okay.
I mean, asking, not me directly, but talking to my staff, and she talks to the same staff members. The feedback I'm getting, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, or what you're hearing is, because they ask us the questions and because things are having to be corrected, it's actually, if anything, it's maybe increasing some of the stress.
Okay,
But that'd be a
thank you.
good assessment.
David, I have no idea. What is the turnover of the applications in a month's time or in a year's time?
Oh, between jail and ECC and some of them,
Bunch.
a bunch. They could be, some days they could be 30, maybe 30. Some months they could be very, a lot less. We can get the average. You could
30 a day or 30 a month? A
a
month.
month, and maybe some months more. Can you go up there and just?
They're all seasonal.
And I guess-
Why don't we do this, because it varies, and right now, just go up there and, or even text them up there and ask them what the turnover's been on the last 2 months, they should go to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get an idea.
Plus new hirings for part-time and seasons, there's quite a bit.
And I wish this, because I don't want to, this is not a question for you, I wish I would have thought to ask the HR director, like what her role in that was for I didn't, because that, I didn't.
Well, when there's turnover, they come, like, a lot of the changes in turnover are still coming. A lot of the changes still come to us.
All right.
Turnover ultimately comes to us, we come in on our payroll.
Any, sorry, we got a little bit derailed there, but I am gonna ask a couple of those questions. Any other notes for David, or questions for David? David, anything else specific? Okay. On to the county mayor. Sir?
County mayor's budget.
Yes, sir.
All right.
What page?
Also, let me go back to our agenda real quickly. Hey, Mr. Isabel, do you want me to go through the courthouse and jail first for you, or do you want to go through yours?
Yeah, you're welcome to.
Which way would you prefer? Because I can
You
go
want to do that first?
I don't care. We can do courthouse and jail, let's do it.
With me talking, I have managed to put my agenda somewhere. Here we go. Courthouse and jail maintenance is on page, I think it says 83 here. And then we'll pull it up on the sheet. And there's a couple of discussions about this courthouse and jail maintenance fund because there's some misunderstandings about it. And then right now we have this budget balance. One thing that happened this year or this coming year is the sheriff's department renegotiated their telephone commissions for the inmates. It's helped your revenue somewhat. But the other thing we're looking at, because there's two sources of revenue in here. This first one is a litigation tax right here. And what that litigation tax says is those monies are to be used for jail and courthouse maintenance, renovation, and construction, and any remainder can be used for anything as approved by the county commission. And the question is, how does the county commission approve that?
Can we restrict that just for the fund? By resolution?
Here's kind of my idea what we're doing. Me and Mr. Izzo have been working, talked about this one. The telephone commission's just been put in there by county commission over time. It can be used for anything. So the way we've had this set up next year, as good as we could, if you click on the appropriations, if you look, there's quite a bit of changes. Our anticipation next year, as much as possible, is just to spend this solely on your courthouse, jail, and whatever the justice center is over there, which are, those qualify clearly for everything. He also has money under what's called county buildings, and it covers the rest. The rest of the buildings that were kind of mixed together. So our anticipation is this year to pay the rest of the buildings out of county buildings. Because we kept a pretty good history, we can kind of look at it, but at the same time, we're going to kind of keep the commission informed to see if one of those two are going to be short. We think there's probably enough money between the two. Go over the county buildings if we can. John will talk about the staffing and stuff. This right here is what I was talking about. These are your county buildings where your electricity and all the maintenance in your general fund for all your other buildings are paid, or should be next year. And then the other thing is the ones in pink are just where we need to adjust because finally, Ms. Northleaf's been asking for a while. She finally got the information from Rutherford County, got to you the other day. So we've got those adjustments over here that need to be added into that. But that's it. That's his other building right there where we do maintenance for all the other county buildings. And then this is your maintenance people. What happened?
There's some buildings, so health department and
They have it in their own too. Yeah, make sure you have to, like, libraries pay their own utilities and does some of their own work, and then health department pays their own utilities. So that's kind of what you got. That's something, was a question for Mr. Show. Go down to the utilities too. We were talking that all departments pay their own costs, like in this electricity. The jail and some of the other stuff's in there. Has been for years. But then if you go back to the libraries, and the health department has their own paid out of their budget. Probably the best way to do it would be pay it out of the department where it's at.
That's the idea.
But the problem is it's been so mixed up in here for so long, and because of time, I think it's something,
this is one of these things that I don't know is gonna necessarily get fixed overnight.
right.
We don't have to fix everything immediately right now. I think there are a lot of places where this is happening. If we can't do that, if it will cause, I don't wanna just disrupt things we wanna fix this, but we don't have to do it immediately.
I think you're correct. It's best to put it in the department as you can.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
like, that's where it needs to go, and that's the purpose of
EMS
this
needs their
resolution.
own,
absolutely.
this right here mainly just needs to be covered like this, and main building and.
I mean, but we
The
could
justice
go
center.
ahead and do it, right? I mean, we could go ahead.
We're talking about the courthouse and jail maintenance fund right now, right? I mean, that's what.
Well, okay, the
this
courthouse
is
and
saying.
jail, it doesn't pay utilities. The courthouse and jail maintenance fund next year is anticipated.
Well, let's talk about that litigation tax that is supposed to be for the
Right.
funding of those facilities, but the commission can use it for other things. I want to limit that.
As approved. So right now is what I was talking to, but you also have that about $500,000 that can be used for anything in there too. So you don't really have that issue, but mine is, our intent is when I talk to Mr. Isabel next year is, when I talk to him, is this to pay courthouse and jail and the justice center out of the courthouse and jail fund. So even though it can be used for, the intent is next year to only use it for.
We should be. I mean, look at all the cost overruns.
And I think that the best way to do it
We need
next
to
year
remove the
is.
500 out of it then.
Yeah.
What now?
We need to remove the 500, or consider removing the 500 out.
But right now, what I would do is
The
just
general
take courthouse, jail, and, the justice center out of that one, and leave the 500, see what the fund does, see if it can cover those costs as excess.
What
Well,
we
it's
wanna
for
do
the
this year
courthouse
is
fund,
we
the
wanna be
500,000
very
for the courthouse.
specific
Yeah,
in
it's
how
gonna
we
be
track
used.
expenses.
Yeah.
The
So
reason,
that, because it
But it's
used
on
to
this
just
page.
kinda
It's
go
in
into
that
a
page.
pot,
That's
and
what I
then
need to
we'll move
remove.
here and there. But if we start tracking the expenses,
even closer.
next year we're able to be, and that includes courthouse. We'll be able to better analyze how we use the fund.
Yeah, it's
And the system have a
accountability.
lot of the stuff
So-
broken, but the issue you've got is there's thousands upon thousands of invoices. So the thought process is, let's, next year, completely out of the courthouse and jail maintenance fund, only pay courthouse, jail, and the justice center out there. See what the costs actually are versus spending, 1,000 staff hours breaking it apart, and hope we get it correct. Because some of the costs, like for 2x4s and some of those items, were not necessarily divided, like your trash pickup, a third party being hired. Most of the big stuff we divided, and I fought that fight how many years ago? See, you guys were here some days, but a lot of departments didn't want it. Actually, you got the commission to get them to do that. But when the commission approved to make people divide it by those locations, it only included certain aisles. They didn't require them to divide everything. It said as feasible, so like 2x4s and nails will not be divided out last year. But my intent is this coming year, as much as possible, the 112 fund, that we divide everything for those, so you'll have an idea what it will cost. But this year, if we do it, we're gonna have to probably do a lot of analysis, know for the best.
Yeah, I mean,
We itemize every receipt now that comes in on maintenance.
But in the past, I had to fight with tooth and nail. It's been this way, the former, and not to say anything bad about the former mayor's office, but the former mayor's staff and office and the former road superintendent did not want to code these by location. We actually had a big argument between us back and forth with the county commission, actually put a resolution on to make them do it, because they didn't want to do it. And what got it all started was the commission wanted the cost for the courthouse, and I couldn't give them the cost, so it came out that when we put in the new ERP, that a couple of these offices basically refused to put the location on stuff to the point where we kept doing it. Well, the county commission got involved, we had a meeting, and you guys actually did a resolution to make them do it. So the costs have been done since, what, 3, 4, 5 years now, probably? That'd be great. But it's the same thing.
I mean, I recognize taking something like that and breaking that out takes time.
So I think if we did a whole year and then we base next year's on it, and then you come in and the litigation tax covers those, and I think Mr. Becker's 100% correct. The smart thing to do at that point would be throw that $500,000 back over here, and at the same time, divide up, like move the jail's utility out of this one over into the jail,
Yep.
and the jail's the big one.
Yep.
Because the jail's cost is significantly
Yep.
understated because the jail utilities are right there. And we could come back the next meeting, see if we can get you a good estimate from the sheriff and actually move it.
Yeah, I would like, to- I mean, I
Well,
don't wanna
the
spend
utility.
thousands of hours, but, I mean, we can
Just the
get some
jail.
directional
I agree.
split.
On this
and
one right
then-
here,
And still sort of have a
a
bucket
big
of
number.
catch,
Overflow,
Well,
this
I-
is our mercy fund.
I think,
Yeah,
your-
or
I think your most efficient would be right here to get your best numbers. This year, just have us run through 112, those three buildings that should only be through their period. See if the litigation tax covers it before you pull the 5, because then if you don't, then we're gonna be trying to scurry and back around, it's gonna confuse the situation. Because if there's not enough for those, then suddenly we gotta cover them somewhere else, so we're gonna be packing a bunch of costs back over into the general fund. I think that would be the best to get your history, and then for this one, today, let's get this number, if we can, correct for the new Justice Center. And then when we come back, when you have your hearings, we'll come back this past year, how much of that's jail, siphon that much off, plus whatever we think the increase is off, that number, and move that over into the jail. And basically, you'll give it to the sheriff and take it from county bills. It'll be a wash, but it'll get your division. And that's your single biggest one I can think of there that needs to be pulled out right now. Can you guys think of another one?
No, but like the utilities for that lease space need to be decreased.
Yeah, when we get down to there.
So
we
just to
can
recap
figure
here,
that.
because it's kind of moving back and forth, and I don't know that we can make these decisions during the workshop. I think
Right.
we want to keep stepping. Let's put that, we've got really, I think, 3 options. One is leave it for a year. 2 is move it now and cause you a lot of pain.
Well, the thing is, I'm afraid you'll be short and we'll have to move some of
Yeah, and
It's gonna
then-
make it hard to track all over again.
And then 3 is, I think, what you're suggesting is an intermediary, which is, we'll go ahead and leave this here, but then
Move the jail utilities.
begin tracking it, and then move it, at some point.
Well,
We don't
that's
have
the
to
same
wait
thing.
a whole.
That's the same thing Mr. Becker said, that's the same thing Mr. Becker said. What, basically, my idea is leave it this year, find out what the cost is. Next year, if there's enough in the litigation tax, pull the $500,000 over there, or whatever. If there's not, then we gotta figure out.
Well, I think that he's saying we don't want to wait, don't let me put words
Well,
in
I
your mouth
mean,
here.
yeah.
We can guess
We
about-
can move the 500 now, and if the litigation tax doesn't cover it, we can just
Move it
supplement
back.
it.
But then, when you supplement over here, it's gonna make it hard for you guys to see which ones. In other words, it'll be paid over,
Let's just track it.
in here, it'll remix them over in here.
You just wanna leave it as it is for this year.
Let's do this.
Let's just do that.
Let's
Yeah.
do this.
It's gonna make it hard for you guys to see. is what I'm saying.
From the jails, are you saying that we have no idea what the?
No, we'll go
that-
pull that one.
Oh,
I've got it pulled up.
Have you got,
In-
we don't have but 12 this year, we can guess it though. Yeah, pull it up.
Let's do this, because
That's fine.
we need to, I just want to get through everything so that we can get into the workshop in earnest, and don't get me wrong,
No, that's good.
this is workshop work.
Is that the jail?
Yes.
So
Okay, this is the jail's electricity, how that total number we shown you for the last couple of years. This year's not complete. See, we code those by location, so we can pull out the ERP pretty quick.
yeah, that's.
That's your jail.
this is what we were looking at. This is, I think, what we were looking
Yeah.
for, not,
We can do that,
not,
but
not
the
an
other one's
invoice by invoice
Yeah.
breakout that you guys are
But
worried
I'm saying
about.
under that courthouse and jail, it's a little more
Yeah,
pieces.
but
in
of that 700,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we
we
can
can
pull
split
that.
that
Yeah,
out relatively
yeah.
Right,
quick.
so we'll need to
Okay,
take
let's do that.
Okay, yeah.
these and kind of
That's-
project. what we
Yeah, let's do
think
that, okay.
All right,
And put it over the sheriff.
so let's, anything else on jail?
Now, the only other question, the logistical one, right now, the mayor's office codes all these utilities, so when his people quit code, the jail people's gonna have to code it in their bills. Do we wanna talk to the sheriff, see if his people, they want you guys to keep coding even though it's in their
We can
budget?
still
Really wanna talk to
we
him
can
about the
still
logistics.
keep coding it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the issue. We
What's in
just-
his major county, they'll have to have their permission, we won't.
Well, they can, I mean, yeah, that's what we'll
In other
ask.
words, like, if there's a mayor's office down here, I won't pay anything through the mayor's without him signing off. Or, I don't know, the circuit court clerk, I won't pay anything out of their budget without signing off, other than like insurance and pre-set up stuff. So you're gonna have to, we probably need to get that set up with the sheriff who's gonna pay that bill. But you can go ahead and
Go
do
ahead.
it.
Are we gonna start tracking then by July?
You can start July 1 on that, we can move the jail's cost over July.
Yeah, I think we should.
And then we can start
Yeah,
tracking,
yeah, okay, okay.
then
That
we can
was
start
what we're-
tracking 112.
We're not-
July.
nobody-
Because when you were
Don't stop.
saying next year, I was going.
No, he was talking about just whether that line item
Fiscal year.
gets moved. We're-
Next
we're
year's
not-
budget, yeah, we'll start tracking July 1, and
Okay,
you'll have
good.
almost a whole year's worth, and then we can project them out.
Yeah,
the road.
that's good.
We're not talking about a whole
Yeah.
cycle.
But I'm
Yeah, it
afraid,
wasn't-
and Jeremy had a good idea, but the only thing I'm afraid of is if it runs short, we'll start bouncing back and forth between the funds. And there's gonna be a lot of leg work and a lot of confusion for you guys on what it does cost. it'd be best to run the 1 year like we're talking, and hopefully it'll put some fund balance in that 112 fund. It's not the healthiest fund anyway.
So,
Before we move off of county buildings and the county mayor, want to talk a little bit about personnel.
okay.
You want to talk about,
So are y'all finished with,
What, anything else on accountability? Go ahead.
I'm gonna take a break for you.
do you want to talk about the county building personnel? That's where the 3 for the new building is. We'll talk about that first.
All right.
That's these, the request is these 3 right here.
yeah, so what we were looking at with bringing the new Justice Center on board, and the problems that we're having with custodians in and out, I felt we needed 2 custodians and 1 maintenance person to keep up with the workload. Right now, we have 5 custodians for all the county buildings
It's your agenda for the day.
other duties that they have. I think, on further reflection, I think we can get by with 1 custodian, and just push what we got. We've been pretty good with, the ones that, right now, we're down 2, due to health reasons. We've been down 1 for, I don't know how many months now. And we've done pretty good job of rotating the rest through the other buildings and kind of modifying duties. So seeing that track record, I think if we just bring on 1 new one, that would be okay, moving them over to the new Justice Center, and then 1 maintenance person to handle needs over there. And then also in the part-time, I wanted to move that over to the county mayor's budget. Not all 24,000, but we were looking at maybe moving 15,000 of it over to the county mayor's budget for a personnel. I'd spoke with the chairman on this, with some changes that we anticipate through discussions with David Lawing, the chairman, and myself, additional responsibilities on personnel in the county mayor's office that I would like these funds. So it's no new money other than 1 custodial person and 1 maintenance person, and then moving that part-time over to the county mayor's budget. So that's.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not a spender, but after having toured that building, that is absolutely an enormous size building. I don't see how on earth you could do it with 1 custodian. I mean, I really.
We're gonna push it.
Well, one will
I know.
come from the old courthouse too.
I know, and of course, it's still only 3 floors.
You're getting also staff from the current courthouse.
So,
3 floors are absolutely
and we're
huge.
moving 1 person from the old courthouse over there.
To be 2.
So there'll be just
If
1.
you think you can, but after having walked that building, it's enormous. I think your first figure probably reflects it, but I don't want to I didn't invest the money anyway, the other commission did, but I don't want to spend $100 million plus for a building like that and then have it trashed within a short period of time. And you think about 1 person, that means they won't be there all day, nor will they be there at night. If something happens during the day, something happens at night.
Right. Well, it's the maintenance. Maintenance is a different issue, but the custodial part, we'll have 1 person coming over from the old courthouse. We have 2 there now, okay, but they split duties with other buildings. So basically what I'm looking at is having 2 dedicated to the new Justice Center, and possibly being able to roll 1 off when someone's sick and moving them to other buildings on occasion. But having 2 people there to maintain all of the facilities.
If we did something like this, I would sure like to do it with the understanding that we may have to come back. Because the group that I was with that toured that building, the technicalities of it will require maintenance.
I'm trying to be as conservative as I can, but if I do see that it's workload's just impossible, I mean, I'll come back and ask, and it'll be up to this body to approve it.
Yeah. I like your idea though, start with less and then build up as we have
So,
to.
one item that you mentioned earlier on personnel, I want to ask the same question that I asked the finance director. And so with the addition of HR 2 years ago, what changed? Is there, I guess both questions. One, what changed? And two, what is your office's role when I'm a new employee coming in? What is that experience like for the new employee from your office?
Okay, right now with the new employee, there is nothing.
They don't come to you at all?
We do not do anything.
You do nothing with it?
Now, let's talk just a minute about HR, because David and HR director and I have had several conversations about this. In my opinion, HR was never properly implemented. I don't think it ever was from the beginning. I'm not assigning fault to anybody. I just don't think the roles of HR were ever clearly delineated. And through our meetings, we still never could really get a clear delineation of roles. We all have our ideas of what HR should do, what finance should do, but as you've heard David speak, you know, a lot of it, because it never was properly implemented, rolled up to finance, because finance was who was doing it before.
And they've also got to be able to understand what they're doing. The problem is we're getting a lot of questions and errors. And to be clear, the mayor's office has never been involved in enrollment. Before HR, it all came to finance. The only thing that did not come to finance was complaints. And the last time they had HR and they got rid of HR, the directive was for the county mayor to take complaints, but I think that's an issue on its own, and here's the reason why. The county mayor can really do nothing else to an elected official, period. Yeah. So here's kind of the only, and neither can HR. So unless Eric would say something different, this is my thought on complaints. Really, it comes from the employee to the department head unless the department head's involved. From the department head to the elected official unless the elected official is involved. If the elected official's involved, my thought process, it probably needs to come to legal, and then they need to outsource the people for us, because legal works for the commission that would be outside of the elected official. Now, if it was to be me or legal, I think at that point, you probably need to set up something maybe to call the chairman of the county commission, because us two actually work for him. That sets up your best, because right now, HR really has no authority over those elected officials. You basically got a department head under the county mayor, that if there's a complaint, she can take no action, and really has no legal expertise. That's just my part.
No,
and maybe I'm looking at it wrong, you can ask legal if I'm looking at it
So
wrong.
you want employee issues to go to the commission?
No, that's not what I said at all.
Well, we're getting a little bit.
No, I said if it was me and
we're
Eric.
getting a little off. I'm not trying to go.
Because me and Eric don't work for the elected officials.
I really just wanted to get that question out there, you know, on record for what.
Right.
For what the role is, what we understand the role is, and what kind of, you know, because I know there are rumblings about lots of things, and I just wanted it all out on the record for, have we efficiently implemented this? Have we efficiently delineated roles and responsibilities for this? And I'm not saying there's any fault to be had, I'm not putting fingers anywhere, but have we efficiently and effectively delineated roles and responsibilities? And has that built a good system for onboarding, recruiting, onboarding, and offboarding personnel, and handling any complaints that they have? That's what I'm trying to. Sure. So anyway, I don't know that we need to go down into it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the problems we have zero offboarding. We have no exit interviews or.
Do we have no exit interviews at all?
But I think it's the same issue if you got the elected officials. I don't think you can legally force them to do that. And I could be wrong, that being Eric or Steve question. If the sheriff terminates somebody, I don't think you can make them go to HR to do offboarding. I think that's really where we're at.
Well, I mean,
Or the
It's a unique situation when you have constitutional officers.
It's a little bit, it's just a little bit different than a business setting, right? I mean, because in business setting, you've got offboarding.
So
What happens?
when an elected official really gets involved, my thought process, you probably need our legal counsel involved at that point, because we got liability and we need to probably just be prepared to outsource.
So we're getting into workshop stuff.
But I may be looking at it wrong, it's more of an Eric
We
question.
can wrap this up.
Yeah, so anything else for the mayor?
That's it on county buildings.
Sorry if I got down the right.
No, we're getting it, okay. I want to be fair and ask those same questions. You did, county buildings, maintenance, any notes, Mr. Mayor, on your office specifically?
There's a couple of minor changes. This maintenance and repair of buildings, that's gonna be absorbed. I need to delete those. That's gonna be absorbed in the, building maintenance budget. It's minor, $85, $475, $500. Other than that, it's,
I don't see this, where we see?
Page 29.
other than that, we didn't have any changes other than the salary lines. What I asked to be moved over.
All right.
Found the table.
The only one you have left is the county law director's budget, but kind of my thought, you might want to go ahead and.
I was gonna say, let's do lunch, come
No, we
back,
won't
we'll
rush.
do the law office, and then we'll get into the workshop.
Right, because they have some issues that took me part of it all the way through.
Okay, we'll back.
Because
You're looking, like we're gonna go.